Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to MBR, or as we like to call it around here, Nothing But Rants, the show where I find topics that I'm oddly passionate about and I pontificate upon them. These are not hot takes, but rather takes that I'm hot about. What's up?
Really like that.
You really like that?
Let's shut up and grind some tape.
Up, ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the Film Guy Network on a fabulous Monday night, and it is massive. It is a massively loaded Monday night. We got a great one for you. There's been a big bombshell report from none other than Ross Dellinger. Anytime Ross Dellinger writes a, quote, sources report, it's a big one. I'm just going to let you know if you haven't been paying attention to the movements in college football as of late. Ross is the narrative controller of all of these. So a massive report from Ross Dellinger. We will start our show with that. We got some exit interviews potentially tonight. A new preseason top 25 dropped. Can you believe it? Are you hyped for that?
Cannot believe it.
Can't believe it.
I am absolutely hyped as can be for a February top 25. Way too early. We'll talk about it tonight. We got some position coaches headed to the NFL as well and plenty of other news. But I want to start with our favorite segment around here. First time, long time. This is Brooks Reed, so you don't have to. Yeah. Massive report from Ross Dellinger and Yahoo Sports yesterday about the almost guaranteed, certain to be happening realignment of the college football playoff announcements. If you don't remember, the SEC and Big Ten announced around this time last year that they were teaming up almost verbatim. I mean, they had mutual statements released by both social media accounts and both presidents basically saying, hey, a lot of movement in college football moving forward. The SEC and the Big Ten have teamed up on future decision making. We are going to approach these as a team moving forward, a team that is much bigger than the rest of you in college football. And they did so and actually made the rest of college football sign an agreement that we are going to refer moving forward as the Memorandum of Inferiority, boys. Let's just picture that name, the Memorandum of Inferiority. All right, that is what the Big Ten and the SEC made the rest of college football sign. And I'm going to get into it a little bit later, but it basically states, we're the big boys. We decide everything. You're going to go with it. Everybody good with that? Last year, they signed the memorandum, okay? Now, this week, the SEC and Big Ten are planning to meet yet again. Reports our second time in the last 5 months. And in the lead up to this meeting, they figured they'd set the fireworks off a little bit early with a Ross Dellinger report. Again, if you don't know who Ross Dellinger is, in my opinion, and I don't think this is really opinion, I think it's kind of fact nowadays in college football, boys. Agree or disagree here, feel free to do so. Ross Dellinger is the most connected individual in the sport when it comes to talking to the decision makers that reside in the shadows. Would we agree?
Yes.
It does feel like every time something big like this is happening or a monumental shift comes, it is usually Ross Dellinger who's spearheading the reports of it.
100% every single time. Former SI employee moved over to Yahoo, has been this for a while. If there is a massive movement, shaking item, the narrative is given to Ross first, okay? The intel is given to Ross first. The green light to report the information is given to Ross first. So we have the Ross Dellinger report yesterday titled, quote, Sources, SEC Big Ten building momentum to further expand college football playoff to 14 or 16 teams. Now, here's where I do the reading so you don't have to. Let's summarize this article for you. Quote, within the SEC and Big Ten, momentum is building to further expand the playoff to 14 or 16 teams. Assign multiple automatic qualifiers per league, as many as 4 for each of them, and finalize a scheduling agreement together that may fetch millions in additional revenue from TV partners, sources told Yahoo Sports. The translation of that portion of that article: the SEC and Big Ten are making power moves to guarantee that they have at least half of the new expanded playoff format in the form of guaranteed spots, at least 4 to both the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, your first question when you hear that is probably, why would the rest of the sport agree to this? Why would they just alleviate themselves or agree to be second-class citizens in this sport? And you will remember, like we started by telling you that the SEC and Big Ten threatened to go off on their own last year and make their own own super league, okay, off to the side and have their own college football playoff. And again, they literally made the rest of college football sign what we are calling the Memorandum of Inferiority. Let's read from this article again.
Was it literally called the Memorandum?
It's literally called the Memorandum of Understanding.
Okay.
That's what it's literally called. The understanding is you are inferior to the Big Ten and the SEC, and you are going to admit it by signing on this here dotted line. You have conceded the race. There is no argument. Whatever we say goes, as is said right here. According to most who have viewed the Memorandum of Understanding, or as we call around here, the Memorandum of Inferiority, from last spring, the SEC and Big Ten hold sole discretion on the future of the college football playoff format starting in 2026, the beginning of the college football playoff's new 6-year television agreement with ESPN that runs through the 2031 playoff. The agreement grants the league's decision-making powers over the format, but directs them to, quote, have meaningful consultation and collect, quote, input from the other conferences before making their decision. Bottom line, coming in the next month or so, I would imagine you'll hear that the 2026 college football playoff format, 2026 through 2031, has been altered and we are moving to 14 or 16. I'm not hypothesizing this. I am telling you verbatim. In the next month or so, the next meeting of all of the collective minds in the college football playoff format I have read is February 25th. So within 8 days, I would imagine you hear that the new college football playoff format in 2026 and moving forward is either a 14 or 16 team playoff format with guaranteed spots to the SEC. And I know this because I read this article today, and I'm not saying that it was a direct basically email chain from Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, but it sure as hell reads like one. Quote, the 14 or 16 team playoff model would grant 4 automatic qualifiers, each to the SEC and Big Ten, 2 each to the ACC and Big 12, and 1 to the highest ranked group of 5 champion. It includes 1 or 3 at-large spots, one of those intended for Notre Dame if it finishes ranked inside the top 14, a guarantee specifically designated for the Irish that is part of the college football playoff memorandum. Guys, this is happening. We are going to 14 or 16. Now, with all of that summarized in that article, I do want to talk about this, or at least decide where we go next with this story, because I think there are a litany of little strings we could pull out of this ball of yarn, most of which revolve around whether or not, the SEC and the Big Ten deserve to have this superiority complex. That's first and foremost. Do we want to talk about what happens to conference championships now? Because now they've been altered. Do you want to talk about whether or not we even like the 14 or 16 team playoff? Or what do you want to talk about, I guess, is what I want to ask you guys. Because there is a lot of change coming in college football, most of which are derived straight from Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti.
I think the first question that's easiest to answer on that list is probably, is the SEC and the Big Ten that much better? So we can probably start there.
All right. As normal, Ross did a great job, not only reporting the information, but getting ahead of the questions that would come out of this, right? As I'm reading this, I'm like, good Lord. I knew the Big Ten and the SEC were going to be out here just laying it on the conference desk table when they go into these meetings. We're the big boys. You guys are second-class citizens. We know this. You know this. I kind of figured that this was going to happen. But my first question as I'm reading it is like, is this warranted? Is this superiority complex that these two conferences have over the rest of college football, is it warranted? And in this report, it states it very clearly. This is data driven. This is not, hey, we just think we're the best. This is look at the history of the college football playoff and look at the history of the college football playoff rankings. There is a clear line of demarcation between these two conferences and the rest of them. This is per the report. Since 2014 playoffs, the SEC has had 52 teams ranked inside the top 14 of the college football playoffs rankings heading into conference championship weekend, or about, I'm not even going to get into the numbers. The Big Ten had 51 teams, the Big 12 next at 23, followed by the ACC, followed by Notre Dame, followed by the group of 5. Okay, so this is being slotted basically how the history of these college football playoff rankings have gone so far.
The first thing that pops into my mind is specifically for the ACC conference, because I don't think, obviously, I do think that the SEC is better holistically than the ACC is. But what happens if there is a year where, say, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, heck, you could even maybe SMU, for example. That's 4 teams right now who we all believe, outside of what happened last year at Florida State, maybe what will happen to them this year, those are the competitive teams in that conference. Those are the teams that are capable of striking gold in a season, and they could be national title contenders. What happens if all 4 of those teams are competitive enough?
This is a tremendous point from Jonathan, because it's about investment and it's about talent acquisition, and that's what it's always been about with regards to postseason play in college football. Are you simply good enough? Do you recruit well enough? Are you blue chipped enough, right? We've heard about these ratios ad nauseum, and they do correlate to success in college football playoffs. Those 4 schools you mentioned, Miami, Clemson, SMU, and FSU, those are the only 4 teams ranked anywhere near the top 20 that don't come from the SEC and Big Ten with regards to NIL and compensation investment. Meaning the highest and most valued or most spent on rosters in the sport, 95% of them come from the Big Ten and the SEC. And then there's SMU, Miami, FSU, and Clemson. These guys got screwed. 100%. Those guys got absolutely screwed.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I think that's more about the conference than anything.
Yeah.
Like
it's more of an indictment on Duke, Wake Forest, NC State. Way more an indictment on that than these 4 football programs. By the way, these 4 football programs been the most vocal the last 5 years about getting the hell up out of there. They probably saw this coming.
Now, they didn't help their case by all taking a step back over the year.
No.
Like Clemson got worse this year. Florida State got worse this year. Miami's one of the only teams that got better, but we all expect them to regress. So, I mean, it's tough to make that argument of like, we got screwed when you're not out here consistently competing for championships.
Yeah, it gives me a bad feeling when I hear things of like, well, these guys got screwed when I don't know. I mean, for me personally, like I do view those 4 programs in ACC. Like I know SMU is relatively new to this because they are in the ACC.
It's more so because NIL and the structure allowing them to go out and spend the oil money.
More so speaking on their behalf of the fact that we know that they're going to spend it. We know that they are now capable of competing for a college football playoff of. I don't know. I don't like this idea that they're getting screwed. We're now creating members in a conference that are angry, and maybe that results in another dissolving of a conference. I don't know. That's where I feel funny about this specific topic.
I mean, I think it's very obvious that we're very clearly moving towards a super league day by day. Like the SEC and the Big Ten have basically said that, and the rest of college football has basically admitted we are the 2 superior beings. Everyone in our 2 conferences are a step above. Then you have teams like Clemson, like Florida State, like we just mentioned, that are eventually going to want to get out of that model of inferiority. It's why the Pac-12 disbanded. It's why Oregon and USC left for the Big Ten this year, because they want to be a part of that higher upper echelon. Because everyone knows that the unspoken agreement is that it is the Big Ten, it is the SEC, and everyone else is secondary. You can have your Clemsons every so often, but other than that, like, it hasn't really been anybody.
So I guess the next transition for me in this topic is whether or not we even like this format. Whether or not we even like the idea of moving to 14 or to 16 after going from 12 or from 4 to 12. Just for the people at home, if this were implemented last year, these would have been your playoff teams. Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss would have likely represented the SEC. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana, the same 4 teams that were in the playoff, would have been in the playoff this year from the Big Ten. Clemson and SMU, the same 2 teams from the ACC, would have made it. Arizona State would have made it again, obviously, and BYU would have been added to the mix. Notre Dame, which we'll get to in a second, you can just mark Notre Dame down. They're going to be in the playoff the rest of the time. And then Boise State. So the only thing that would have changed last year is the Big 12 would have got an additional one. And Ole Miss probably would have sneaked in there as well. My whole thing about the college football playoff and my whole aspirations as a non-biased guy, just someone who loves a ton about college football. I've made my entire life moving forward about the sport of college football and care about it a tremendous amount. All I've ever cared about is whether or not we get to the end of the year, and I know for a fact the team holding the trophy was indeed the best team for that calendar year. Now, I do think the more and more we expand this sucker and the more and more we make you play in December and January, we're getting far closer to a discussion of who was the hottest team, not who was the best team for the calendar year. That I can understand. However, this is not a sport of Cinderella stories. That's not what college football playoffs are going to be, all right? So this idea that you can be a mid-major football team, or this idea that you can be a one-hit wonder, maybe you can get through a 17-game schedule required to win a national title nowadays, but odds are you are not. Odds are you have had to have built this roster, culminated it for 3 or 4 years, spent millions of dollars on it to be good enough to go head-to-head, toe-to-toe with the sport's best for a month and a half. I am not going to complain that statistically we've probably increased our chances of having better results in terms of knowing at the end of the year we got the best football team. Now, this year, I don't think anybody can doubt Ohio State was the best college football team, both on paper in August, we all said that, and at the end of the year, they played the best football. I think we got the right answer this past year. And I think that moving forward, we might get closer to the right answer every single year. However, I do fear that we're getting into that hot team strikes late, wins a national title.
Yeah, that's all it is now. I get what you're saying.
You still got to be a top 4 team in your conference in the big boys, which is hard to do.
That's fine, and I get that, but it's still who can go on the hot streak for 4 years. Never mind that you just lost to a near 500 Michigan team. Never mind that you looked you lost to Oregon. Never mind that you looked very pedestrian throughout the season. You did not look like the best team from August to December. And then in late December and January, you ended up going on a really hot streak, and everyone wants to say you're the best team in the country now. I get that. I don't like that. I don't like that you can be rewarded for being pretty mid throughout the regular season. And I'm not saying they were mid.
Yeah.
By their standards, they were not reaching them at all.
And by 2012 standards, they don't win a title.
Correct.
And I think that does bother people. It does bother people that you don't have to pursue perfection like you used to. Now we just have to pursue a really good roster that can finish top 4 in our conference in these 2 big conferences.
The biggest problem I have with this format is it rewards mediocrity from teams that should be elite. Ohio State no longer has to be elite in the regular season. Georgia, Texas, Alabama, all these teams no longer have to be elite because the margins are so wide. You had to be elite, and I understand that the BCS is long. You had to be elite in the 4-team college football playoff. You got your one regular season mulligan, and that was don't lose from that on out. Don't lose your conference championship. Don't have another regular season slip up. Now it's you can have 1 or 2. You don't even really need to play in the conference championship game. It might not be beneficial for you to do that anyways.
That's a whole nother spinoff we're getting to next. The conference championships have been blown to smithereens with this new report.
Well, I think even this past playoff, we kind of already got into some conversation about finding a team that maybe isn't the best team, but could definitely go and win the next 4 games in a playoff. This was the whole pitch around South Carolina and Ole Miss being worthy of a playoff spot. Nobody thought that they were the best team in college football, but a bunch of people believed that both of those teams were talented enough to where, hey, you match them up 4 times in the month of December, they're definitely good enough to go and win a national title or at least compete for a national title. So I think that just opens the door now to where it's no longer just a discussion point of potentially of happening. Now it's a sure thing of one of those types of teams or multiple types of those teams is going to get a spot in the playoff.
Here's another issue I have with this format, and it's that it's never going to solve the issue of blank got screwed. Because on that list that you listed off of the 14 or 16 teams, South Carolina's not on there.
No.
You're still going to have people saying...
If we go to 16, they are.
Okay, well, still. But then at that point, the margins will just move again, and it was
correct.
Team X was better than Team Y. Look at the performance of that. We're always going to have this discussions of, they got snubbed. They should have been. The system's broken. And that's not going to be solved unless you get auto bids. And we all understand that auto bids aren't realistic because the conference tiers are so different.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big issue you have in college football now is auto bids eliminate the discussion of so-and-so got snubbed, but then auto bids also create the discussion of so-and-so got snubbed because we all know that conferences aren't created equal.
There's been a bunch of takes about the auto bids. I don't mind auto bids. I don't at all. It's the auto buys that I've had a major problem with. This whole idea, like last year, guys, we had the 10th ranked team get placed in the 4th overall spot because they won a conference championship game. By the way, in a conference that we now know they've agreed is inferior to the rest of them, right? That's what happened to Arizona State. Arizona State won a conference championship game in the Big 12. They got the 4th overall seed. I believe Boise State was ranked 3rd. And we all knew they were ranked outside of the top 10. They were teams 10 and 12 in the overall rankings, but because of auto buys and you win a conference championship, you get up here in the top. That's stupid as hell, especially now knowing what we know. Everyone has agreed, Big Ten, SEC, everybody else. So if you win one of these everybody else tournaments, that's awesome. You get acceptance into the big boy tournament, but you don't automatically get a bye just because you won an inferior conference. That's ridiculous. And I do think they're going to clean some of that up. They have to. There's no way on one hand you can tell me that we are inferior or we are better than everybody else. There's a clear drop-off between them. And then, oh, by the way, we'll give you guys auto buys for winning your conference that we don't think's that good.
Yeah, and I think part of this was also the ACC shitting the bed this year because that stipulation of the 4 highest-ranked conference champions was so clearly done to be, hey, we're going to get the Power 4 teams in the top 4. They'll get their buys, and then we'll get the regulation for the Group of 5 charity team. And it just so happened that Boise State was ranked higher than Clemson this year, and everyone was like, why the hell is Boise State getting a bye week? Everyone knows that they're a charity team this year. So I think the ACC really screwed things up for them there. But I agree with you that this auto bid for conference championships, and I get that it was done to add the incentive to winning your conference championship. It's just not going to work out.
And let's transition now into conference championships. It's going to get blown up. I mean, there's talks now of the SEC playing like a 4-team tournament to decide. Stupid.
It's over.
But it's, we're going to have. I've also heard maybe there's a conference championship Saturday in the SEC that looks like the top 2 teams playing and the 3rd and 4th seed basically deciding who's the 3rd and 4th seed. And I highly doubt Big 12 and the ACC will even do anything with their conference championship, because if I'm those 2 conferences and you're telling me I'm getting 2 automatic bids, come conference championship weekend, we're doing everything we can to protect those 2 top bids. Mm-hmm. They're definitely not playing one another. You're going to have to rank them, but they're not playing one another, risking our 2 automatic qualifiers getting hurt or getting knocked out or something tragic happening to them. We're going to just let them get accepted in the college football playoff, right? What is the incentive to the ACC and the Big 12 to have a conference championship game?
There isn't one.
None.
Yeah, none.
The college football playoff committee is going to tell you how they think they're ranked anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're going to, and on the other side, you're going to have Big 10 and SEC teams potentially playing a tournament.
Not happening. And I mean, this is the unfortunate casualty of this expanded format, where it's like, why the hell do we need to play this game? Where back in the day, where if you had 1 regular season loss or you had 2 regular season losses and you needed to win that game because losing it meant you were out, it's at a point now where they've kind of created this stipulation of, well, you're not really going to be punished unless you lose really, really badly, and otherwise winning it is going to mean really nothing for you. So it's a casualty of the expansion, and we talked about that and we saw it coming a while ago, but it is what it is at this point. Like, there's nothing you can do.
I feel like that Adam Silver is running college football right now, because I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's been happening in the NBA, but Adam Silver has this weird obsession with tournaments to where now there's an in-season tournament and an NBA Cup, and then there's also like these tournaments now at the All-Star Game. But then you have
this is the European soccer model. And the European soccer model is, how many different versions of quality product can we put on the shelves and replace shitty product with good product, which is also another spinoff of this. The SEC and the Big Ten aligning, and the SEC and the Big Ten forcing their hand into 4 automatic qualifiers has now opened up the doors to interconference play between the 2 leagues. So we do have a Super League on the way. It's just going to look a little bit different than an actual Super League, them separating everybody else or from everybody else. We're going to have 9 conference games in the SEC. I can almost guarantee you they're moving to 9. All right. And then the other 3 games on the schedule every year will be scattered between really big programs. And this is the good news out of this. And I know there's a lot of negativity out of the chat in this, and there's a lot of concern about the future of college football. And everybody's kind of approaching this with a level of pessimistic viewpoints. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of approaching this like, what the fuck is going on? Why are we doing this? I think there are good news or good things coming out of this. Basically, we're going to get better football games. Now, they're not going to mean as much. You can lose them. You can afford to lose them. Mm-hmm. You can. But just because you can afford to lose the game between Ohio State and Georgia in September don't mean it ain't a good fucking football game. You know what I mean?
That's true. And I mean, that is, I guess you could say, the silver lining to that, but that's not what made college football special in the first place.
No.
The marquee
But it sure as shit what makes the NFL special.
Mm-hmm. That's fine, but why are you trying to be the NFL?
Because the NFL is the big dog. They own everything. Well, they got all the money. And that's the other thing. It's all about money. You know, being able to sell these interconference games between Georgia and Ohio State, Michigan, and Oklahoma, being able to package these football games is another opportunity for ESPN to go out and make another TV rights play, which is the bottom line of this.
Well, I mean, you could look at it this way of Georgia's season last year, it felt like every single weekend they were playing in a historic football game, like one that will last for the rest of eternity in your mind. And then also the other thing, like the more and more discussion we have about the expanded playoff. I mean, I was reluctant of the 12-team expansion that happened. I felt like it went a lot better than what I envisioned. But also, too, like, you're really just becoming more uniformed with how all other college sports are in regard to postseason play. Of baseball has regional, then super regionals, and you go to Omaha if you move on. And then, I mean, basketball has a massive field that plays in a massive tournament to decide their national champion. I mean, every single other college sport has some type of massive bracket that a bunch of teams get dumped into it that we now crown a champion. So it really just become more uniform at that.
Hold your thought, Kirby, because I just saw another yarn get pulled out of the ball here. Question comes from Nick Carwell in the chat. What happens to the small schools that live off all of that money with regards to the non-conference play? Guys, rev share is going to kill these guys anyways. Okay, I hate to tell you, but Coastal Carolina ain't opting into $20.5 million worth of money to their players. They're not going to be in the rev share model. They're not going to be in the level of college football that we're still in now. I don't know if that means all of these mid-major games are canceled, because I highly doubt that. But I bet App State now has to go get their ass beat by a Big 12 team. They ain't getting it cooked by Clemson anymore. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. No, ACC probably will still get it cooked by Clemson. But Georgia State and Georgia probably ain't playing anytime soon.
Nope.
I would imagine. Now, that certainly hurts those conferences, but I already told you, those conferences and all those schools in level of football, D1AA football and mid-major football, apart from Memphis, ain't going to be able to buy into this stuff.
No.
So it doesn't matter.
But I mean, that's not a expansion or conference realignment or college football playoff casualty. That's more just a NIL and rev share casualty.
Correct.
I think that's somewhat a separate topic.
100%. Now, another spinoff off this actual topic. Who's pissed and who's pumped? We already talked about who's pissed. Clemson, FSU, Miami, and SMU should be absolutely livid.
Hey, right Texas Tech is real pissed.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Texas Tech. Well, no, Texas Tech was already confirmed they're winning the Big 12 championship, so they ain't got to worry about it.
They ain't got to worry about it. You're right.
Yeah, no, they're coming.
You're right.
You know, they spent $10 million on 17 players, so they're coming. Fucking Texas Tech, dude. Crazy. But, yeah, there are a couple of programs that are like, wait a minute. I got billionaire boosters. I can pay for good players. And now you're telling me I'm a second-class citizen?
I mean,
it's not going to sit well with a billionaire.
Does UNC fall in this discussion now too?
To an extent, yeah. But if I'm one of those teams that's not like a perennial runner, you know, yeah. I just got to get to my conference championship game, and I'm guaranteed. Like, this helps Iowa State. This helps Kansas State. Mm-hmm. This helps basically the second-rate team in the Big 12. Because last year Arizona State was in, and that was like it. Your conference champion was ranked 10th last year in the Big 12, and now you're going to get automatically 2 players into this thing.
Yeah.
When last year you weren't even close to that. Once BYU lost their second game, it was like, get the hell out of here. Mm-hmm. Now you're still in contention as long as you finish second.
The list of teams that are pissed, obviously, are the ones that are usually not second-class citizens but are not being looked at as like we said. But it's going to be teams that win a game in the regular season, then lose that team in the postseason, or they get just left out because it's the 5th best SEC team, but they get left out for the 2nd best Big 12 team, and then there's a big argument about that. So I don't think there's specific teams, but it's going to be situational where teams go, this format sucks, we got screwed, we're the better team, we should be in there.
I would not be shocked, and we'll never know this, but Sankey's kind of hinted they're kind of happy at 16. Mm-hmm. Petiti hasn't really commented on it. But I do see a world where the Big Ten and the SEC look at Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and SMU and say, hey, let's just chop them up 2 for 2. Let's move our conferences to, SEC will go to 18. I think, isn't the Big Ten already at 18?
Yes.
I have no idea.
We're so down the weeds in this, man. I do think there's a world where either those 4 teams pony up the lawyers, try to get the hell up out of the ACC, or they just... I am perplexed if I'm a Clemson fan looking at this saying, oh, well, there's no doubt every year we're one of the 2 best teams in this conference.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, are you that pissed if you're Clemson?
Because you're now
in a conference where you're in a very winnable conference.
Not only that, you're in a very top 2? Done.
Yeah, do you really want to go over to the now? Money-wise, absolutely. But do you really want to go over to the big pond here where it's going to be Georgia, Alabama, all these other teams that you have to compete with consistently to be top 4 spot when it's SMU. Sometimes Miami has a flare up. Sometimes Florida State's good every now, but it's never all of them at the same time. You're in a very winnable situation if you're Clemson.
I don't think Clemson's pissed in the sense of their situation. Like, overall, like how their playoff outlook now looks in their conference in this type of scenario, but I think they're pissed in the fact of people already look down upon the ACC. People already give you a crap about your conference schedule of no matter how many games you win or no matter how good you look in your conference schedule, like people are still going to crap on you, but now it's kind of really getting thrown in your face, and it's actually there's like actual written evidence of like, yeah, you suck. Like this conference ain't crap.
You put your name on the dotted line, brother. You signed the memorandum of inferiority.
Yeah.
You signed it.
We're accepting this now. Like that's where they're pissed. Like, why are we accepting this bullying behavior?
My favorite quote in the Ross Dellinger article today was basically the Big 12 commissioner getting lippy, talking about, I'm bringing my data. Motherfucker, you signed the agreement. You put it on the dotted line. You are a second-class citizen, and now you're going to act like you big boy. No, that's not how this works, unless you want to go, fund your own league, which is a whole nother discussion.
I mean, if you're Clemson, if you're Florida State, if you're Miami, if you're Arizona State, just become the big fish in the small pond.
Got to.
Like, that's kind of your option here.
It's way cheaper than trying to buy your way out of the pond.
Mm-hmm. And
way cheaper.
And it's going to be way easier than going over to the other big pond where you might be the same size as a lot of these fish, but you also have now 5 or 6 other fish that are easily compatible with you. Just go win the ACC every year.
Now, Notre Dame, ecstatic with today's news.
Man. Yeah.
So they basically all they have to do is finish inside the top 14. For the record, since the college football playoffs have been enacted, Notre Dame since 2015 has never finished outside the top 14 after the conclusion of the regular season. Every year. Come on down with the Fighting Irish.
Don't have to play the conference championship.
And by the way, if you ain't noticed, they are putting that college football playoff money, which they get to keep to themselves, all $20 million was that the payout. They get to keep all that $20 million to themselves, whereas the $20 million that Ohio State got has to get dispersed amongst all the other teams. Now, this is the offset that most will tell you, well, the Big Ten teams get TV rights deals and they get all this. Well, Notre Dame's got their own TV rights deal with NBC, so they ain't necessarily hurting on this front. If you haven't been paying attention, Notre Dame is trying to hire every freaking body right now. They tried to hire loudmouth GM from Texas Tech. They tried to go down and hire director of player personnel at Auburn and Kenyatta Watson. They hired the offensive or running backs coach from a Big 12 team and brought him over. All right, so they're going out here trying to hire everybody with that playoff money. They've got it stacked up in the bank accounts.
It's honestly crazy how they were able to basically, holier than thou their way to the most favorable playoff format system
out of all of them.
We're not joining a conference. We have our own TV deal. We don't need that. Playoffs can have whatever. We don't need the auto bid. We're just going to stay right here. And now they basically have an auto bid every year.
And better yet, the alienation of their football program is just their football program. Aren't they an ACC program in every other sport?
Yeah,
essentially. Yeah.
Yes. No. They are.
They are. They get all of the bonuses of being a member school of a conference and get to solo their way through football.
Yeah.
Because they're Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm. I'd be pissed if I was Brian Kelly. I'm just going to put that out there.
For real?
Oh, I'd be so mad. I'd be so mad the fact of, I mean, you just mentioned it. You hit it. Since 2015, have always been inside the top 14. Always gotten scrutinized for not being able to win a national title and make the playoff consistently, getting embarrassed in the playoff. Marcus Freeman gets a job. 12-team playoff comes on. Then he goes and plays for a national title, and now you're telling Notre Dame, hey, you're just a shoe-in every single year for the playoff. Like, life could have been so much easier for him.
Who got more screwed by timing? Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame prior to this change in college football, or Jeremy Pruitt basically having his career ruined months before NIL was legal?
Probably Jeremy Pruitt. Brian Kelly's still at LSU.
Yeah, it's $85 million.
Yeah.
Not
Jeremy Pruitt's coaching high school basketball.
Getting made fun of. Yeah, so he's doing all right. But yeah, Jeremy Pruitt coaching high school women's basketball.
Something like that. It's like a middle school boy.
That's a downfall right there, brother. That's unfortunate. Golly, that's the most unfortunate timing of all timings. The whole staff was filled with like really, really good football coaches too. By the way, all of their college football careers ruined 6 months before Nico got $8 million and flown on a private jet.
It's also like, don't get caught, man. Everyone was doing it,
and they was wilding.
Yeah,
I'll tell you some of those stories off air one day. They were wilding at Tennessee under Jeremy Pruitt.
Everyone was doing stuff like that.
Yeah, well, everyone was cheating in the SEC during the time. Mm-hmm. I'll admit, everyone was cheating in the SEC at the time. But if you went outside of the norm, like especially breaking moral codes, all right, you got snitched on. and they broke some moral codes.
Yeah.
All right. The old adage was, you can drive 10 over, but don't be driving 105 in a 55 because we're going to come get you. So, yeah, that was the old ways of the day. Now we have a whole new structure coming out in college football.
Who else is pumped from this, though?
I think I'll go on the other side. I think some folks out in like the Midwest are pretty pissed off, at least in speaking terms. Like, if you are an SMU fan, if you are a Texas Tech fan, if you are an Oklahoma State fan, you just got told you don't really matter as much.
I think that G5 teams are ecstatic. Like, there was a major conversation around those
Completely
teams where, like,
eliminating them,
get this out of here. We don't want Boise State in the playoff, and now you're still in the discussion. Like, an expansion is coming, and they're still talking about, like, yeah, we're still going to give you a spot. We're still going to give you an opportunity. Like, those teams should still be happy with that. Just the fact that you're even still considered.
I think the middling teams of these big conferences, like the South Carolinas, the other like Indiana's, schools that never are going to be at the top, never going to be at the bottom, are always going to kind of be in the middle. It's just like, hey, we just have to kind of be third or fourth in the conference right now.
Yeah, that's a moving bar for them. That bar has come down.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Whereas even last year at 11-1, at the end of the season, Indiana was like, "Are we going to make it? Are we?"
Yeah. Now you're in.
Yeah. This really helps you with your schedule lottery as well. You know, if you get a good shake of it, you got an opportunity. Unless you're Missouri, you got an opportunity to go run it down. I like the idea that we're going to get better football games. I don't like the idea that they're not going to feel like they matter as much in September.
No. Or you're going to be told that they matter a lot, and they'll matter for the entire 3-month allotment, and then all of that will be thrown out the window come the time of playoffs.
I think like
the Oregon-Ohio State game is a perfect example of this, where you had an instant classic 1-point victory for Oregon, immediately get thrown down the drain and tainted because Ohio State beat the shit out of them in the Rose Bowl.
But we still got to watch a really good football game.
Yeah, but you look back on it now and you go like, well, that game was great, but it doesn't really mean anything.
No, I don't think of that way.
But why?
I just think about it as I want to watch as much great football as I possibly can year round.
For the same reason,
and we got more opportunities to get it.
That if an Alabama fan came up to you and said, yeah, that 2021 Georgia team was good, but what happened in the SEC championship? You would respond?
Well, you won the Natty. But
exactly. So the last game that you won, the one that mattered most, matters. Like the 1-point victory of Ohio State means nothing for Oregon fans now.
Yeah, but that doesn't happen every season.
Yeah. At least in the college football playoff, outside of the LSU season, this has happened.
Like,
it's going to happen a lot more, though.
The talent has dispersed.
But
so it should.
What do you mean?
I think it's good that we have created a little bit more margin for error, because I think the odds of going undefeated nowadays are almost nil. Because there's 35 programs that have blue chip prospects on them, whereas 6 years ago, there were 7 programs that had blue chip prospects around them.
Yeah.
The depth on these football teams is not as deep. We talk about it all the time. The spreading of the talent in college football has never been higher, meaning we need to probably increase the field and increase the number of guaranteed spots in the field from the good football programs.
See, I don't agree with that, because increasing the field just increases the fact of, hey, play fine here, have a really good 4-game stretch. Any team in the country, any team in the top 25 can have a really, really good 4-game stretch.
I don't think you're providing enough credit to being a top 4 team in these conferences. Because if you're a top 4 team in this conference, normally in the SEC and the Big Ten, you could be argued for one of the best 12 teams in the sport.
You could make the argument, sure.
Not the argument's been, historically, the argument has been made. I told you with Ross Dellinger's stats there, okay? There have been 51 and 52 SEC and Big Ten teams. The other conferences are cut in half with regards to teams ranked inside the top 14 at the end of the year. History says these conferences have the best teams, so give them more.
I don't know. To me, also, like, this past season, I never felt as if, like, watching some of these great regular season games, as if it didn't mean any less. Because I don't care what you do to this sport. I don't care how many teams you add to a college football playoff. The pride that resides in fan bases for their university to beat anybody and everybody still resides. Like, no matter who the team is, no matter, like, what the situation is. And now, like, sure, like wins were meaning of you're fighting for one of the 2 spots in SEC championship game, and that also means you're fighting for one of the 4 spots at a college football playoff. Now this just means that, well, this win might signify us sliding up to number 3 in the conference standings in late November, as opposed to like, I just think that the situations and the circumstances around these games change. But like, I didn't feel like the games mattered any less. Like, sure, the record might not mean as much anymore. You're not really fighting to go perfect, but again, like, wins are what matter to college football fans no matter what. And people are going to be prideful about that no matter what.
If we just did it this way, if we just said, hey, does everyone on this stage agree that there is a difference between the quality and depth of football in the Big Ten and the SEC than there is in the ACC and the Big 12? Do we all agree?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do we all agree they should be represented thusly with the number of representation members that they have in the playoff at the end of the year?
I would agree with that.
Then this is a good thing. And if you just looked at it that way, instead of, I do think there's going to be a lot of spin. Well, we just alienated the little man. Okay, that sucks. But that's kind of the way sports work normally.
Yeah,
I'm not as worried about alienating the middleman, honestly. Like, that's never been the issue. The middleman's always been alienated. Like, there's never been a Cinderella story. There was never one in the BCS. TCU was the closest thing you got in the 14 playoff, and that took almost 10 years to get. I'm more worried about retroactively looking back at these games and going, well, that didn't really
You're
matter
terrified of the New York Giants beating the Pats.
Not even, I mean, kind of.
With that example. That's what you're terrified of. Eli Manning in a pass rush getting hot. And then beating arguably the best football team ever created in the NFL.
Exactly.
Because they got hot.
And I think we could all look at those two teams and go, like, were the Giants the best team in the league that year?
When it mattered.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, we're moving when it matters.
Look,
to a point.
hey, it happened in the Daytona 500 last night, brother. My boy William Byner's damn ninth place. Wreck happens right in front of him last lap. Green, white, checker, boom. Win.
Yeah,
double time, 2 times in a row.
There was a race.
I didn't watch it.
Big time race, brother. Big time race. They was going left real fast. Boys, we all know why they're going to 14. We know why they're going to 16. It's all about that money. Absolute rocket ship worth of money. I mean, that stock price of college football going right through the roof on a rocket ship. Rocket money. Rocket Money? You ever heard of Rocket Money?
I have heard of Rocket Money.
Hey, Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/gameon today. That's rocketmoney.com/Game on. That's rocketmoney.com/Game
on.
Oh boy, appreciate those guys supporting the show this off season. Boys, a new top 25 drop. A little way too early preseason top 25. And I don't know about y'all, but that gets my juices flowing because we're talking college football in February. What the hell else are we going to do? Let's read it down. Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia round out the top 5. Oregon, Clemson, LSU, BYU, and South Carolina, a preseason top 10 football team according to ESPN. Iowa State ranked ahead of Bama, Illinois, Arizona State, SMU round out the top 15. K-State, Indiana, Florida ahead of Tennessee at 19. Louisville, Michigan at 21, Texas A&M at 23, Miami, Boise, and Ole Miss round out the top 25 on this ESPN way too early, if there's such thing. Top 25 college football preseason rankings. Initial thoughts, boys.
Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Boise State ranking is just a courtesy. You're just number 24 because it's like, we feel like we got to do this. I don't think anybody could even project what Boise State is going to do.
100% would have slid Memphis in there instead.
Yeah. That feel like
I at least know they spent the dough this offseason.
Exactly.
Had to. They got $5 million annually they got to spend.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of these rankings as well that are just projection rankings of like, we think you're going to be a top 25 team. Like, I don't think Florida showed you anything last year that they were a top 25 team. They close out, yeah, but I think that's kind of the buying the potential. Same with South Carolina. I don't believe they're a top 10 team. Ooh. They're top 20. They're in the top 25 for sure, but top 10's high.
We have lived long enough for Shane Beamer to have preseason top 10 expectations.
SEC media day.
You know what? I was just a little bit premature. Just like, I knew I was going to play for this guy. I knew I would play for this guy. I knew eventually the take was going to hit. Maybe this is the year.
It's over.
Unfortunate. The Brooks Austin curse will happen.
The Brooks Austin curse is going to. The Brooks Austin curse happened last year.
Oh, dude, I came right out and was like, dude, I'd play for this guy. Next week, loses a game he shouldn't, breaks his foot on a bench.
It happened last year.
I know. Happened again last year.
You were like, I'm back on the
Beamer bandwagon.
I think they lost to Illinois that day.
Bielema embarrassed him
that
on
day.
national television.
Not only that, crashed out on the sideline because of injury substitutions or whatever.
In other words, we regret to inform you, South Carolina fans, it's not going to go too well this year.
I'm still a believer in Lenore Sellers.
That's fine.
Dude, how about USC, as Georgia fans would call them, USC Junior being preseason ranked top 10, and in year 4 of the Lincoln Riley experience out in LA, not a preseason top 25 football team. Where in the hell is the positive momentum for the Trojans? Is there any?
Dude, there's not even optimism. Like
none.
In years past, like it was at least, hey, the quarterback is really good. He can make something shake with Lincoln Riley. This year,
there's nothing for that program.
Who is providing that?
Hunter Lacey, if you have a certified ball knower shirt like the one Jonathan has on right now, you need to turn that thing inside out and wear it the rest of the time. Hunter Lacey says Sellers is the poor man's Milroe. Sir, it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful. I will not take that. Way better passer.
Yes.
Way better passer.
He's a much better thrower of the football.
And much better decision maker.
Now.
Sorry.
About his turnover program, though.
Definitely his turnover pro.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
Needs to clean that up.
Might have small hands, too, considering how much he fumbles.
Potentially.
Check
Disproportionately small hands.
I have to check the mitts on Sellers.
It's a real thing.
Seeing Alabama on 12 here is wild.
Insane. Seeing Alabama behind Iowa State was mind-blowing.
That's kind of crazy. And that's the interesting thing, though, too, is because we have this entire agreement that we just talked about, and then it's Iowa State's one better than Alabama. Simply because of the record and the way those two teams finished last year and the talent that Alabama lost. But I don't know. It used to be weird to see, like, damn, Alabama's not in the top 3. That's interesting. Now they're not a top 10 football team.
How do you think Tennessee fans are feeling? 19.
Man. I feel weird about Tennessee, honestly.
This is a type of preseason ranking you saw under Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly what those years look like.
Don't do that.
I'm not doing...
He's not that.
But he's not.
He's better than that.
He's not. Josh Heupel is so much better of a head coach than Jeremy Pruitt is, but that's what that feels like to me. Like, that's what this reminds me of Tennessee's coming into a season where they're ranked number 19. And, I mean, heck, we even got some feedback from some Tennessee fans, and they were like, yeah, checks out. That sounds about right. Like, that's probably where they need to be. It's just it feels like things collapsed. I shouldn't say collapsed because the program has not collapsed whatsoever. No. But I feel like things have trickled down rather quickly for them.
I thought we were going to have a top 12 type season from Tennessee this last year, ramping and culminating into year 2 and third year in the system. Nico, surround him with weapons. Let's make a push. All the weapons left. They didn't add any. Mm-hmm. It's very concerning, the offseason lack of momentum that Tennessee was able to create. Now, that being said, he's recruiting really, really well.
Oh, absolutely.
He's recruiting really well. He's top 7 right now in 2026, and he's landing, most importantly, this dude is landing quarterbacks that he wants now. All right, I don't care what the rating system says about George McIntyre. I know he got hurt towards the end of his senior year, missed the Elite 11, and when you miss the Elite 11, I'm going to tell you right now, you're going down 24/7's composite rankings. History says it. Remember what happened to Gunnar Stockton?
Yes.
Gunnar Stockton fell like 40 spots, for not being out at the Elite 11. So it will happen. Most importantly, this dude identifies key targets and then go out and land them. And obviously, they have money to spend on the NIL front. There's no doubt about that. But this dude's recruited really well, and I'm bullish on what's going forward. I was very disappointed on the lack of additions and movement that they made this offseason. Now, I know it was a shitty cycle. Mm-hmm. I understand that.
Now, let's also play devil's advocate here. How much of this narrative is different if you don't go into Columbus and get murdered? Like, I feel like them losing to Ohio State by as much as they did kind of just put the bow on, well, that season was disappointing. Now, that was a failure.
I think it impacts this ranking. I think it impacts the preseason rankings,
sure.
But I do not think it impacts my thought of Tennessee right now.
I don't disagree with that.
Of the disappointment, like what Brooks is mentioning right now, of the disappointment of didn't feel like you really capitalized off this. Like, it felt like Tennessee was surely going to land one of the handful of wide receivers that entered the portal. Like, it just felt like Tennessee does this. They're going to go and find one of those guys. They're going to get one of them, and they just didn't. Like, they didn't go get one of them.
I think the narrative, if you go into Ohio State and lose by 10 points, like a modest, like you lost, but it was a modest loss, the narrative around Josh Heupel right now is kind of, hey, things kind of need to start changing around Tennessee, as opposed to right now it's like, hey, things might get ugly at Tennessee if things don't turn around here. Like, if you told Tennessee fans that they'd be at this spot in 2022, they would be very unhappy right now. What?
I was just reading chat. I do think that it felt like I just had the mindset of, like, what if Nico is the Jake Fromm to the Josh Heupel era? Like, he was the first blue chipper, the first guy that got in, and then the team and the high school recruiting belt line actually got put together after that. That 2025 class at Tennessee, I think, was top 12. That 2026 class right now at Tennessee's top 10. The 2024 class led by Jordan Ross and Mike Matthews, not bad. Okay. So I do think that the parts around McIntyre will be better than the parts around Nico right now.
And this was just kind of
this is what we're doing. I started this last football season saying 2025 is Tennessee's year. And now I'm starting the 2025 offseason talking about maybe the McIntyre days are the ones. That's the problem.
Yes.
That's a problem. That is a loss of steam by any metric.
That's been the Tennessee problem for 15 years. Next year we got better recruits coming in. I mean, I don't want to be like trashing the Tennessee football program, but that's what you've been contending with since.
Not like this. Well, there's a major difference between recruiting 15 to 25 perennially and recruiting 7 to 12 perennially.
Correct.
There's a major difference.
But the results are still the same, and the outcome is still, we got to wait till next year till we get the next batch of recruits in. This year was disappointing, but next year's going to be the year. Like, it's been that way for 15 years. And it was that way for Georgia fans for 25. Like, I get it. Like, I've been there. I've seen this movie before.
Oh, Georgia was the king of next year you. This is, or not even next year. This is our year.
Yeah.
That was Georgia's model.
Absolutely.
This is the one. This is the one. This is the one.
Absolutely.
That was, I'm just laughing at the fact of you saying, what if Nico is the Jake Fromm for Tennessee? And now that comes with the price tag of, you're telling me we paid $8 million for Jake Fromm? Like that, but that's where the conversation really gets stirred up.
I'm here to tell you, state title winning 5-star pro style quarterback Jake Fromm, if he existed right now in 2026's recruiting class, he's fetching 2.3.
Yes,
I'm telling you that right now.
Oh, no, I don't disagree with that, but I'm also getting at is because that price
and
tag.
by the way, I don't think he's that caliber. I think I knew far better. The comparison is the roster during Jake Fromm's time was not anything like it was in 2021 and 22.
No, correct.
But that roster in 2021 and 2022 does not get created without Jake Fromm's time.
My point
at Georgia, you see what I'm saying?
No,
same thing could happen for Tennessee.
But what I'm
stack a couple 9 and 3s and then go get some dudes.
What I'm getting at
stack
is
an SEC championship and a playoff run. My bad.
That's true.
What I'm getting at is that you leaked out this $8 million price tag for a quarterback, and now you might end up not even doing anything with that $8 million quarterback. Like, now your fan base knows this. Like, they know what you paid to get this guy. And so now that brings up a whole bunch of questions. I mean, it was already brought up during the college football playoff after the Ohio State loss. Like, that was the whole talking point of, can we start talking about the fact that Nico is not playing to $8 million status that we brought him in for? Like, that's just reality of today's world of college football. Like, it's great that you can go pay $8 million for the 5-star quarterback and the number 1 quarterback in the class or whatever, but that also means that if you don't do anything with it, then you're up to be scrutinized.
Any other notes on this preseason top 25?
Do we really think Penn State's the 3rd best team in the country?
On paper, they are. They return more starters than anybody else, more quality, high-end starters.
I think that's
than anybody else.
I think that's more looking at the logo and being like Penn State and Notre Dame.
Well, Penn State finished the quarterfinal, semifinal. Penn State got to a semifinal.
Yep.
Okay, they returned their quarterback. They returned both running backs, and they return a lot of offensive line production. So that's
logo. That's
hype.
Logo bias.
It is, but it's also it's an indication of where the rest of the sport is more so than it is where Penn State's at. It's the fact that everybody's rebuilding in college football this year. It feels like everyone except for Clemson and Penn State. Those are the only 2 programs. And Clemson's got an entire defense they got to reload. By the way, Had a bunch of senior defensive linemen get up out of there. So they have a lot to replace as well. But they have a returning quarterback and returning production at a lot of key positions. That's the reason for the hype around those programs. I want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at BetUS. If you have not checked out BetUS already, you need to head over there right now.
5 in a row.
Yeah, I know. Use promo code YouTube150. You get 150% deposit match up to $2,000 in your first deposit and 125% deposit match on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. Again, that is promo code YouTube150. Head over to BetUS. Guys, make sure you are supporting those who support us. As the offseason continues, we will start to ramp up. These are the lows of lows with regards to viewership on our channel. It will only increase from this point until the night of the national championship. And I understand that. But the guys watching and gals watching right now, you are our most dependable, okay? So I need you to go support those who support us, most notably our friends over at BetUS. Shout out to those guys. Shout out to you guys. And shout out to the college football coaches dipping out for the NFL without the negative storylines that we hear constantly when college football coaches, like, I don't know, Brian McClendon. When a guy like Brian McClendon takes the offensive or wide receivers coaching job at Tampa Bay, having just had that job at Georgia, last year, for some reason, everybody was like, an indictment on college football. The life of a college football coach in peril. We are in so much trouble. We got good coaches leaving the sport of college football. Didn't hear that narrative this time around for some reason. Now, I don't know why. I think I have a theory. I think college football coaches have stopped bitching.
Do you think it's also like some coaches are like, hey, maybe we stop talking about how hard it is to be a college football coach and stop talking about the reasons we left are because of how tiresome the job is, because what you're doing is literally killing the sport?
Yeah, let's just stop bitching. That's a good idea. Let's act like, we're paid $900,000 to work 365 days a year. Hey, by the way, I don't know how many people are in your tax bracket that ain't out here working 365, by the way. You know many rich people that got days off?
No.
Not until they retire with billions, okay? So until you get there, buddy, you got to work every day like the rest of us, unfortunately. That's the way I feel about it. And yeah, when, our man Tashard Choice, who I thought was the best running backs coach in college football, when he takes the running backs coach's job with the Detroit Lions, it makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. When Oregon's wide receiver coach, Junior Adams, dips out to go be the wide receivers coach with the Dallas Cowboys, it makes a lot of sense. Also, by the way, I do believe that you're going to see a more trend to position coaches in college football or in pro football becoming younger and younger and younger and younger, because these NIL era athletes that think they got pull, all of them are now entering the NFL, okay? And their entire lives have had a whole bunch of leverage, and then they're going to get to the NFL, and they're not going to have it. They're going to be contractually obligated to stick where they're at, and they're going to need a football coach that can relate to them. I think you're going to see the NFL move younger and younger at these positions.
That's an interesting thought. I didn't really think about how you're entering an era of, it's going to be NFL within the next 5 years where players are kind of entitled, whereas well, I was trying to put it lightly. I don't want to be too
older, so I can hate on the young kids.
I don't want to be too blunt.
Yeah. You know what? I have officially entered into get off my lawn territory, and all it took was that dumbass tax law. You want to piss me off? Give somebody a tax break that I don't get. And that's what just happened in Georgia. That's what's happening in Alabama. And the whole narrative, like, it's called the Kirby Smart rule in Georgia, or it's labeled that. What they're doing, guys, is they're under the guidelines of fairness, because Texas doesn't have an in-state payroll tax, that they're going to make a rule where college football players don't have to pay in-state payroll tax in the state of Georgia. Which, my immediate response, guys, was, what's my incentive to stay in the state of Georgia? Why don't I just move to Florida and go get non-in-state tax?
I don't think there is.
Hurricane season.
That's the problem.
That's also...
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I was all about kids making money until y'all was out here giving tax breaks and tax incentives, and now I'm off the rails. I'm off the rails. I can't have it. Get off my lawn.
Sit back in.
To be fair, though,
it's gonna be all right.
The silver
14%. To be fair, 14%.
The silver lining
is state income tax in the state of Georgia. I got taxes coming up. You can tell.
Yeah, the silver lining of this is, though, college football players in the state of Georgia that make that much money to where it's going to make a difference is like 0.0001 of the state population. Like we're talking about at most 150 people, at the absolute most 150 people getting tax breaks.
But they're already in the upper 1% of the tax bracket.
That's fine.
Already.
But they also have
at 18 years old, and you're giving them an additional like 26 grand.
Yeah, and they're going to piss it all away.
That stimulate the local economy.
Exactly.
It's economics play.
I'm here.
It's genius.
I'm here for
right there. I'm here for another hour. That's what I'm here for. We got a local hour coming up right now, and it is indeed our best hour. We got some dynamite reporting from the homie Ben Woke.
Welcome into Talk the Dog, the show where we find a bone to pick and a take to give. These are not hot takes. These is dog takes. Can I talk that dog? What's up? Really like that. You really like that? Let's shut up and grab some tape.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another hour here on the Film Guy Network. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up button, like, subscribe, and rate, review. And I always say like, subscribe, rate, review. The rate review on that is a direct send to our podcast audience. So if you listen to podcasts, if you miss any portion of tonight's broadcast, it will be made readily available. However, wherever you get your podcast, just search the Film Guy Network. We got a loaded local hour for you guys. Paul Feinbaum, a little bit critical of UGA fans in their response to their quarterback situation. Arch Manning in the news today, or at least his brother's comments in the news today. Predictions for biggest combine winners coming tonight, and we're going to address my foot in the mouth. We're going to call that an official footing in the mouth.
I don't think that was a foot in the mouth.
I think it was a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I think it was a take that folks didn't like.
Yeah.
That's a good way to compliment.
Coming off of a very emotional night.
Yeah. So we're going to learn a lesson tonight. Can't wait to do that. So enjoy that. But I want to start with the news from today. If you didn't read today, there was a report from 24/7 Sports and our homie Ben Woke today about Matt Hibbs, the director of the Collective, or the CEO of the Collective at the University of Georgia, being replaced by Tanner Potts, and Stephen Drummond being promoted to the Deputy AD and Chief Marketing Officer. Let's start with the Collective news and why this matters and who these people are, because I feel like a lot of people know that Georgia has a collective. A lot of people know that the Classic City Collective exists, but you probably don't know who has been in charge and responsible for running these entities, and that is a failure on my part. Probably haven't educated you guys enough, so we're going to try to do that today. Matt Hibbs, if you didn't know, was the first choice. I mean, the choice from Kirby Smart and the football staff and the administration to run the Collective when it first came out. When NIL first came around, Matt Hibbs was the guy. Now, who is Matt Hibbs? Matt Hibbs was a former member of the athletic administration department, and then there was foresight coming down that, hey, this NIL stuff might come out, and we're going to need some collectives. And by the way, there may be some shady rules where you can't just be connected to the program and run it. Kind of has to be separate. Remember that, how you're not allowed to really talk, but now you are. But used to when it started, you weren't. So here's what Georgia did. They sent Matt Hibbs out away from the athletic department for, a year or so. Had him disassociate himself with the Georgia football program by way of working with Barstool. Now, why would he be working with Barstool? Well, he wanted to understand the media rights game, understand what streaming is, understand what podcast platforms are, understand how do we promote our players, all that good stuff. That was the intentions. He leaves Barstool as soon as NIL starts and becomes the CEO and the director of the Collective at the University of Georgia. And now he is stepping down to go run another business venture. Now, I don't necessarily think the business venture is worth talking about, but I can summarize basically what I think it is. I think Matt Hibbs is trying to get into player representation, or at least taking cuts off of some of the player opportunities that are available, most notably video rights. Okay, he is getting into a venture that is going to collectively represent all athletes that have their names in college football video games. for a small fee. But anyways, not necessarily the point. The point is, who's he being replaced by? He's being replaced by a man by the name of Tanner Potts. This is the second choice, okay? This is the next up, if you will, being hand-selected by the University of Georgia to run their collective. And he's been around the entire time during the NIL space. Tanner Potts is a University of Georgia graduate. I assume he is wicked smart. I don't know much about him. I have not interacted with him at all. I will tell you, he has a UGA law degree, and he's been in the athletic associations for 3 years.
That's big.
It's big. He's got a UGA law degree, and he's been around and in the athletic department for 3 years. I think the most important news that came out of this article from Ben today, and we've kind of hinted on this and talked about this around here a little bit, was actually about the changes with Stephen Drummond. Again, this comes straight from the homie Ben Woke. Quote, additionally, UGA Vice President and Chief Communications Officer Stephen Drummond has been named the Deputy Athletic Director and Chief Marketing Officer. Program sources told Dogs 24/7 Drummond's primary responsibility will be fundraising beyond the revenue share cap that will be made available via the House versus NCAA settlement. The settlement ranges from approximately $21 million to be made available to the athletic department. Sources indicate Georgia is likely eyeing $14 to $15 million allotment for football. Drummond will be responsible for helping the Bulldogs raise additional, quote, over the cap dollars to remain competitive financially in the new college football landscape. Essentially, if you guys recall, let's say about a year ago, I started throwing around the term super PAC. Okay, that's what we got in politics, not to get political, but that's the only analogy I have for you. Every year when you run for office, you got to run around, collect some money to fund your campaign. All right, every single time you got to do it, and those are called super PACs. It's a bunch of people with investments or slants and reasons for you to get elected, and they put money up in your account for you to go out and run your campaign. Well, annually, every single year now, I wouldn't even say year, month to month right now, there is a super PAC being funded at every single football university trying to be able to pay their payroll. That money has to be sought after, okay? They are putting Stephen Drummond in front of that and spearheading that. Now, the next question becomes, who is Stephen Drummond? Okay, because if you're a Georgia fan listening to this today, you probably don't know who Stephen Drummond is. Stephen Drummond was introduced to us in the media last year as essentially the assistant SID at the University of Georgia. He was around everything regarding football, sat in on every single press conference, was standing on the sideline at every single football game, was around every single thing that is regarding Georgia football. And it's interesting because this guy's got a very, very interesting background with tying business and football. All right, business and football being tied together, essentially what he's got going on now in his new role. His background, like I said, is really, really interesting. Drummond began his career in sports with the Jacksonville Jaguars as the media communications intern. 19 years later, he was named the Vice President of Football Operations with the Carolina Panthers.
Oh, wow.
If you don't know how NFL organizations work, Director of Sports Communications intern to the third highest ranked employee in the entire organization. Pretty damn good climb.
In just 19 years?
Pretty damn good climb in your professional career. That's the best way I can define who Stephen Drummond is. He's an extremely savvy businessman that's dedicated his professional life to football. And Kirby Smart had the foresight. That's the most important thing about this, in my opinion, in the reporting. The idea that Kirby Smart a year ago was like, hey, the Drummond dude, that guy that's Vice President of Football Operations at Carolina Panthers, bring him on down and let's just assistant SID him, which means just put a tag on him, and let's just let him observe everything with regards to the world of college football in this place. And then next year, when that revenue sharing model's coming down, that House versus NCAA settlement, after that comes out, let's just make him the director and runner of our super PAC every single year, because this super savvy businessman clearly knows how to run a professional organization.
Smart move. The reasons why these people are handpicked.
I mean, we started talking about House versus NCAA in August of last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They hired Drummond like in February.
He's got a crystal ball.
I mean, just the idea that we're like, all right, this settlement's coming down. Who are we going to get to be our pseudo super PAC runner? I don't know. Let's bring this guy that, David Tepper tapped as like the best businessman in his organization real quick.
I also think that this is very reflective on the conversation of hey, when's Georgia going to hire one of these GMs?
Never.
Doesn't really seem like you need
Never.
one of those.
Never. This is something smart. Yeah, this is something we talked about with sources a while ago. I think we were in New Orleans when we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that Kirby Smart would let Courtney Morgan's brilliant. I'm sure he is. The goofball at Texas Tech that loves paying people to write articles about it. I'm sure he's great at what he's doing. I'm sure he's really, really a football savant. But the idea that Kirby Smart is going to bring someone into his building to give him the final say-so about who they're going to sign, get the hell out of here. Never happening. Now, I did get this comment today. Used to, deciding who your players were was just selecting the 25 guys in each high school class and then stacking your roster after that. Now it's a full control of the 85. Like Kirby Smart's afraid of being a meticulous details manager, an obsessive savant. This is what he wants.
I do think this is why you're not going to get 30 years of Kirby Smart, though. Because he is too involved in everything, which is it's gotten you where it's gotten you. This
is the intel I've gotten on this, what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. There is going to be a sense of burnout very soon. If there's not, and what's burning Kirby and guys like Kirby out, it's not just Kirby. What's burning college football coaches out is I sign a player in December. By January, some bitch is in my office asking for more money, threatening to leave. And I'm constantly in this negotiation process, worrying about my team getting tampered with, worrying about all this day-to-day operations, constantly trying to keep people on my team. If that is rectified through rev share models, through actual contractual agreements between players and universities, meaning I'm going to UGA for $250,000 in House versus NCAA percentage of rev share, and I am destined to be here for 12 months. I have to be here for 12 months. And then after that, I can go wherever I want. When we create a level of stability like that, I think we extend the lifespan of a guy like Kirby Smart by a decade.
Could fixing that not just be as simple as realigning the transfer portal rules, though? Because you still have to imagine that, yes, you're going to have the rev share model, but there's still going to be, hey, we can hand you X number of dollars under the table if you go to the portal.
So I think the player mobility and the extreme player mobility that we have right now is just because they're in violation of antitrust lawsuits, which they're about to be done with. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in exchange for my rev share model, I can put stipulations on you now because you are a paid employee, meaning you can't be tampered with. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to be here for the contract length that you're here. And I think that will provide, I know that will provide a tremendous amount of stability into the sport of college football, which means, again, if I sign my roster, my 85, that 85's tight for a year and we're good. All we got to worry about is develop, and we get back to coaching. So I'm saying, coaching.
Do you think these contract lengths are going to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year deals, or is it going to be?
I think they're going to be from August to May. Like in public school education, there are 10-month employees, 11-month employees, 12-month employees. Yep. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to have 10-month employees. You sign for the calendar year after the spring portal, you can go wherever you want.
So then does May not become a nightmare for you then?
Yeah, but that's fine. I would rather May be the nightmare than December be the nightmare, which is what we got right now.
Yep.
We got December being the nightmare when we're trying to play games basically through freaking February now. Retarded. Goofy.
So then is that going to kind of revitalize this spring portal window then, you think?
Should, if it goes to that.
Okay.
Should.
Because, I mean, it feels like now that the spring portal window has gotten so diminished because it's, hey, get in while you can, get your money while you can. You're entering the portal in the spring because you essentially lost your job and you realize that, I'm not going to play here, and someone saw you on whatever scouting they did and hit you up.
Yeah. There's going to be stability, I believe. Arch Manning went to Texas so he could disappear.
This is news.
Is that what I heard today?
Yeah, basically.
Is that what I read today?
Yeah,
from his brother?
Yeah.
Who most people didn't know existed?
Yes.
Hyde is his name?
I guess.
Hyde Manning.
We saw pictures of him at
yeah, we did.
At the
Manning's
back office.
Isn't that called Manning's?
Yeah.
Isn't that where we were?
Manning's.
New Orleans Manning's back office, waiting for our Paul Feinbaum hit. I say ours because it was collective. It was team effort.
Yeah.
It was good stuff.
I didn't do anything, but you were there.
I didn't do anything but touch my glasses and worry about the audio coming back in the back end. But anyways, it was a shit show over there at the Mannings. But yeah, let's talk about these quotes. Now, this is an interview with, what's my man?
Hyde Manning?
No. Who did it?
Let me figure that out.
It was the Texas 24/7 site is who it was.
Looks like it was Chip Brown.
Chip Brown is his name. Legendary Texas beat reporter. My bad, Chip. Chip Brown did an interview with Hyde Manning, who is he a twin brother? Twin brother to Arch?
He's younger.
I think they were in the same grade. They came to Texas at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Either way, he is the brother of Arch Manning, and he was asked basically what the process was about and what the process was and why they chose to go to the University of Texas, or at least why Arch did. And here are the quotes. Quote, "I remember him asking a lot of questions away from football," Hyde Manning said via 24/7 Sports. "Nothing about NIL dollars or the NFL. He was asking, quote, 'Am I going to be able to get away and maybe go somewhere where people don't recognize me as much?' he said. And out of Athens, Tuscaloosa, and Austin, it's easily Austin for that."
First reaction, this would be like interesting, but then you like break it down, and it kind of made sense.
Makes a whole lot of sense. I don't know if that would have been where we were leading things off with, which the way he said it made it seem like that's what they were leading off. He wasn't talking about NFL. They weren't talking about NIL. It was, hey, am I going to be able to just be a normal guy every once in a while?
Well,
because I kind of like being a normal guy.
I just hear
the
that.
answer to that is going to be no matter where you go.
No.
All I heard was Georgia Bama fans no more ball.
That's what you heard?
Yeah.
You heard that Georgia and Bama fans are more likely to recognize Arch Manning than Texas fans?
They no more ball?
I think it's just a massive city.
Yeah,
Well,
It's a massive city.
Absolutely.
I think Austin is far more conducive to star power and hiding star power, if need be, than the city of Athens and Tuscaloosa. Those are facts. I don't think that's a lie.
There's actually a funny story I have with this. This was like 2021 season. I was obviously still like heavy into the student activities. We're walking around downtown one time, and there was a line for a bar that is typically not very packed. And someone's like, "What the hell is going on with this line?" And people are like, "Arch is in here." Apparently Arch was on a visit there, and just stuff like that. So it makes complete sense to me that a guy like Arch Manning could walk into Tuscaloosa or Athens, Georgia, to where
I feel like a fish in a bowl.
yeah, let's be fair. The only thing that the main thing that is going for those cities is football. Like if you take Georgia football, Alabama football away, those two cities become very, very diminished. You can take Texas Longhorns out of Austin, and it's still going to be a successful city.
I don't know. I mean, Brock Bowers felt like he could come back to school after going into the NFL. I mean, he's walking around Athens right now.
I love Brock Bowers.
They treated JT Daniels like he was a damn Hollywood superstar.
Oh my god!
Because that's what they are. That's what they are to everybody.
They had all kinds of crazy stuff happening. I am under the impression. I remember my brother. So I don't know why we're going here, but it's superstar power, right? I remember my brother telling me stories firsthand about the Cam Newton year. My brother's a freshman at Auburn on the baseball team. The year Cam Newton won the Heisman and won a national title at Auburn, and during August, they signed some guy from Blinn Community College. Big, awesome, cool, walks around campus, happy-go-lucky Cam Newton. The Cam Newton we know. Big smile, boisterous personality, Cam Newton, superstar Cam Newton. That's how he walks around and meets and greets people in August. By September and October, my brother told me when he was walking to class, he would have a hoodie pulled completely over his head, his Beats headphones put over his head, his arms locked in case like this. He walked around like he was terrified to be recognized. Because it had gotten to that point where he couldn't go through his day-to-day life at Auburn being the biggest superstar in college football. Arch Manning will be this, whether or not it's warranted, whether or not he's earned this on the field. The answer to that is no, by the way. He has not even played anywhere into this echelon of where he's at, but his name alone and the talent and the prospect of it will create this.
Yeah, for sure.
And we saw this on his recruitment visits to Georgia. It was pandemonium. You mentioned it.
Yeah.
The bar, all that good stuff. I saw thousands of pictures on social media of him, of people just doing what you do when Arch Manning's in town in Athens. It is different in Austin. We've all been to Austin, all three of us.
We felt like you and me went to Austin that was a Texas game and felt like this doesn't feel like a college town.
No. Feels like a massive city with a football program
That just
5 miles from downtown.
Just so happens to be there.
Yeah. So I understand what he's talking about now.
For sure.
Would it have been my primary objective? No, but I've never been this.
No.
I've never had, none of us have. No one ever listened to this has ever had this type of star power.
I know it's just not supposed to come off this way, but it's kind of like the odd the audacity almost to be like, it doesn't matter where I go, I'm going to be fine. I just don't want to be recognized. Like, that's almost like, holy shit, dude. Now, I get it. He's a Manning. He's football royalty, but it is kind of
be good.
It is, yeah.
He better be good, dude. I think he's going to be.
I hope he's
but
good.
He better be great.
I hope he's good because honestly, like, he seemed like the right one to be made like famous and everything. You know,
I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
We think we know.
I hope
every bit of their public imaging control and campaign on this has been perfect. So much so that most people think he's down to earth. He might be, but he was out here like, hey, don't take photos of me when I show up on campus at 18. Down to earth though, just a regular guy.
He wants to be.
He wants people to think he is. I'm sure he does want to be normal. But he's a Manning.
Yeah, you can't be.
You can't be. That's not how this works.
It's like when Michael Jackson would like rent out whole ass WalMarts and hire
just to go shop
just
like
to go
a normal
shopping
person.
And feel normal.
That's not how normal people shop, my guy.
No.
Speaking of quarterbacks, Paul Feinbaum was a bit critical on the Georgia fan base's reaction to Carson Beck. I'm going to summarize this, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. This is basically what he said. The parts around Carson Beck failed him last year, and they're getting worse at the position with Gunnar Stockton.
That is essentially what happened. He went on a spiel about how he didn't really understand the negative thoughts and comments towards Carson Beck's situation, and that
then threw a shot at the Lambeau driving.
Yeah,
did you notice that? Mm-hmm. It was like, I can't believe Georgia fans were mad about this guy not playing very well. He's better than Gunnar Stockton. Last bar was maybe he was too focused on learning how to drive a Lambo truck. Paul's on heater.
Paul is the Michael Jordan of off-season takes.
Oh God,
no one better.
Nobody better.
Just like Paul Feinbaum.
He's so good at it that they bring him on to whack Stephen A. Smith's ass during the offseason.
Yes.
You know how good you got to be at giving hot takes to be coming in, brought in to spar with the Mike Tyson of hot takes? Come on, man. Great at it. But yeah. Basically said, how dare Georgia fans for running this guy out of town or being happy that he's gone. He's better than Gunnar Stockton. Thoughts?
I mean, obviously right now, Carson Beck is better than Gunnar Stockton, especially if like what we know of the two. Carson Beck is better than Gunnar Stockton. Now, that could very quickly change as well. One season can change a lot. It could form a lot of different opinions. Just 2 seasons ago, we were talking about Quinn Ewers being the best quarterback in college football. This guy's going to be a first round, number 1 overall draft pick. 2 seasons later, he might be a back end first round pick, maybe not even that. So, I mean, opinions on quarterbacks fluctuate and change so quickly. I don't really agree though on the fact of talking about Georgia's weaponry of it wasn't great with Carson and now it probably got worse with Gunnar. Like, I don't know how you could expect it to be any better. I don't necessarily agree with that part.
No, I don't either. I think 2 things can be true with his comments, right? He mentioned that Cam Ward is an upgrade, or Carson Beck is a downgrade from Cam Ward, and Gunnar Stockton is a downgrade from Carson Beck. And in a vacuum, I think Cam Ward is better than Carson Beck. And I think what we know of Carson Beck is a more guaranteed than or at least because it is guaranteed, we know what it was, than the projection of the unknown of Gunnar Stockton. That is a wholesome statement that I can somewhat get behind, that is not a hot take. Where we get hot is out here talking about the supporting cast failed them, and this Miami cast we talk about as if it's an improvement, because it is not. It is not an improvement for Carson Beck with regards to the surrounding efforts down there. I also think it is true to state that Georgia has a chance to be better on offense than they were a year ago, considering the changes that they've made at the positions he specifically talked about failing them at.
Exactly.
They brought in Zachariah Branch. You brought in Noah Thomas. You brought in the highest ranked pair of wide receiver targets that they've had in 6 classes.
Pretty much.
Since George Pickens and Dominic Blaylock. Not pretty much, is. Mm-hmm. Since 2019. So he just failed to mention all that, but that's not what he's there to do. He's there to give a 60-second hot take that's going to get clipped by on 3.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that he's basically commenting on the ceilings. I think it's fair to say that, though we don't know anything about Gunnar Stockton, the best version of Carson Beck is probably a little bit better than the best version of Gunnar Stockton. Now, with that said, are you going to get the best version of Carson Beck at Miami? I don't think it's... I think it's pretty safe to say you did not get the best version of Carson Beck in 2024. Other parts around him failing him or not. Carson Beck was inconsistent last year. Whether you want to blame that on wide receiver play, whether you want to blame that on other things, the injury he may or may not have had, like, Carson Beck, through a large portion of the regular season, was wildly inconsistent. And I would say if Gunnar Stockton can offer you some sort of consistency, even if that ceiling might not be, first overall NFL draft pick like we thought Carson Beck could be, I would take consistency over that.
Mm-hmm. I think too, like when you look at it because I think Paul is pitching this in the sense of what this season is going to conclude about the two. And best case scenario for Carson Beck this season is he does end up being a number 1 overall pick in the draft, like many projected him to be this past season. Best case for Gunnar Stockton at the end of the season is this is a really good college quarterback. He's going to be Georgia starter next year. They're in a really good spot at the quarterback position. Those are two very different, ceiling arcs, I guess, for the 2025 season. And that's okay. Like, again, both best case scenarios work out very well for both individuals. But I don't know. I think if you look at it holistically, I wouldn't necessarily agree to the extreme that Paul is putting this at.
I also think something that's getting overlooked in all this is that Carson Beck is injured right now. Like, there's a video of him doing an interview in Miami. He's got a long sleeve on his arm.
Oh, yeah. Have you never seen how Tommy John works?
Oh, no, I know how it works. I'm saying,
let's talk about it for the audience. So when you have Tommy John, they put you in a spring-loaded elbow brace that has a degree switch right here in the elbow. And as the weeks progress outside of your surgery, they slowly let that sucker out. So you start literally like this in a sling, and then they just open you up until the point where your arm's actually flat now. And then you wear the brace a little bit longer, then you take it off, and then we start throwing very, very slowly. This is a very extensive process.
Exactly.
It's been drastically reduced in terms of the amount of recovery time, but it's an 8 to 10 month injury normally.
Yeah.
Now you can rush it, try to get back to 85% health without fear of re-tearing the ligament in about 6 months, but you're in a sling for a fat minute.
Yeah, I just think that the overall public is forgetting to operate on that assumption of like saying Carson Beck is better than Gunnar Stockton. Carson Beck can't throw a football right now. So,
sidetrack, one of the gnarliest tattoos you'll ever see, and it's come a little bit played out now, is when pitchers get Tommy John and then they tattoo the stitching, like a baseball stitch, on the scar on their elbow. Mm-hmm. It's kind of gnarly.
Yeah.
He's probably got Cavender. Oh!
Dang, that was a shot. Unnecessary.
He's a good football player. I do think he would have been a first-round draft pick had he not blown up his elbow.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I don't even think this stuff's even a topic. I don't think we're talking about it if he doesn't blow his elbow out. Had to slide the joke in there. Had to.
That's low-hanging fruit at this point.
It is, man. And you know what? I gotta watch out for low-hanging fruit. I gotta be a little bit more disciplined. So I learned this weekend on social media.
Yeah.
So here's what happened.
Was this your first run-in with like Georgia fans saying,
sure.
Shut the hell up?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Just making sure.
No, 2019 to 2021, people don't remember. Like, we're a thing now. Like, our approval rate is pretty good now. 2019 to 2021, Brooks Austin was not universally liked. All right, not even in the football space. There was a lot of shut up, fat boy. You don't know what you're talking about for a good 2 years. And then everybody's like, hey, you know what? This D-bag kind of knows some ball. And now, certified ball knower, king of the space. Fair?
Really good at your job.
See what I mean?
Good job, man.
Not always the most likable, never have been, okay? Even when we started in the Georgia space. But this is certainly my most recent, and it's been a while, of, hey, shut the hell up. You don't know what you're talking about. So here's what happened. I stuck my foot in my mouth a little bit on social media, or at least approached a very angry portion of the Georgia fan base with the wrong tone. Here was my tweet. Quote, I've covered Georgia athletics for 6 years now. Something weird happened where UGA fans went from not giving a single damn about hoops to expecting actual wins and being mad when it doesn't happen. Didn't go over well at all. I had a lot of people say this football reporter doesn't know what the hell he's talking about with regards to college basketball. What my tweet should have been, all right, I think I merely should have tweeted something along the lines of this. The Georgia basketball program now has reached a level of financial and emotional investment to where fans are demanding higher expectations. Mm-hmm. That's the observation.
Yeah.
That's the observation I should have made instead of basically saying, oh, now you care. Now you care about basketball. That was my overarching point. It shouldn't have been the point. The point should have been, hey, the care around this football program, the passion, or basketball program, the passion around this basketball program has drastically increased. Also, what has increased? The actual investment from this athletic administration department. They have doubled, nearly tripled the investment into basketball since Josh Brooks has taken over as athletic director. And they've dumped money into everything. They're building a new track facility. They're building a new baseball, or they just added onto the baseball field, finishing that up at Foley Field. They are trying in all of these other departments, and we've seen that with now the engagement and the enragement of the fan base when expectations are not met. That's what I should have said.
Yeah,
I didn't say it.
And I don't think you were so out of line to call out Georgia fans for saying, like, now you care. Like, we went on this. We had a bit about this like a week ago. Of like, what would you give up? What's the worst Georgia football season you'd accept for the basketball team to have a national championship season from the basketball team? And people were, I'd shut the basketball program down if we got a first down against Vanderbilt, like stuff like that. So there is a lot of this. Georgia fans do not care about basketball.
I think there's a portion, a majority of the fan base that cares strictly about football.
Correct.
Strictly about football, do not care about anything else. I'm a Georgia football fan. I'm not a Georgia athletics fan. Now, I think there is a even smaller portion, but a much more passionate portion of the fan base that wants them to be great at everything.
Oh, yeah.
And those are the people that the athletic administration should be caveating to. Mm-hmm. And again, failure on my part there. Mm-hmm. However, that's I do think that is a legitimate reality of this basketball program. In my opinion, most of the fan base went from basketball season to why aren't we winning like Auburn is? Why aren't we winning like Mississippi State just flipped around? Why aren't we doing what Missouri just did? Why? Florida. You look around, and that makes it worse than what's going on right now.
And I think what also supplements this anger for the Georgia fan base is that you've had 2 seasons now where you start out looking really, really good. I mean, hell, they were a top 25 team at some point this year where things look like they're on the up and up, and everything completely falls apart.
I'm going to do the Kobe. I'm going to do the Kobe right now. Ice out, ISO, clear out. We got a certified, round ball knower around here. We got a certified stretch up in here, 6'7" galore. Did nothing but play hoops his whole life. Cares about Georgia basketball at a much higher rate than yours truly. I am conceding the floor to Stretch right here. Stretch. What's going on with Georgia basketball program? Where are we at? What is the general feeling? What are your thoughts on this discussion of y'all got real expectations?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the expectations came at a proper time. I mean, I think that Mike White and his staff have earned expectations. I think that's the right phrasing, that they have earned the right for fans to expect them to win basketball games and to win and to go to the tournament. I think that they have earned that right. But you just mentioned a very great point of you're also getting this conversation of, well, success can happen overnight. You've seen Missouri do it. Auburn's winning at a high clip. And I want to start actually with Auburn because I just kind of want to put some context around all of this.
Hasn't this been like a 7-year climb for them?
Yes, and that's what I want to get at. So let me put it this way. In Bruce Pearl's first 3 years at Auburn, the Tigers missed the tournament in all 3 years. In the last 2 of those years, Auburn had a top 20 recruiting class and a top 4 in the SEC. Very similar to what Mike White and his staff have done over the last couple of years. On top of that, though, they won 9 SEC games over those 3 years. Most notably, they lost every single conference game in his 3rd year with the program. Mike White is in his 3rd year. They've had much more success than Auburn did in Bruce Pearl's 3rd year. But a program that had made the tournament just one time in the entire 2000s upon Bruce Pearl's arrival. Georgia's kind of in that similar realm right now. Last time they made it was the 2014 season. So the first point you probably would make after this is, well, this is a different era of college basketball and college sports. The teams can be revamped, reloaded, and compete in a 1-year turnaround. That's what I keep seeing. That's what people are saying to you. Of it can happen overnight. Well, what if I said North Carolina has missed the tournament twice in the last 5 years, and they're currently predicted to miss the tournament for a 3rd time this year, as they currently sit at 15-11.
That's blue blood.
North freaking Carolina, a team that spins for recruits, a team that spins for transfers, a team that is expected to be great every single year. Prior to 2019, they missed the tournament a total of 3 times since 2000. So yes, success can be just a season away, even if you go 0-18 in conference play the season before. Looking at you, Missouri, a team that gets mentioned a lot in this conversation. But a reality check can come just as quickly. In fact, the program that I just mentioned did the exact same thing. Missouri in their first year Hunter Dennis Gates made the second round of the tournament. That was followed by their winless record in conference play, 0-18 last year. Now they're in contention for a tournament spot again this year. I'm not saying don't set expectations or to not have aspirations for this program. I think it's great that Georgia basketball is getting attention. I think it's great that people care. I think it's great that more fans are jumping in on this and are showing interest in this because, again, I think they have absolutely deserved it. But let's not act like the sky is falling either and be ready to kick the man out the door because the first year these type of expectations arrived, they weren't met in the fashion that you had hoped.
By the way, set himself up for failure through success. The reason this, in my opinion, the reason there's been such a disdain for the way things have finished is not only because of the second half debacling in all of these football games and basketball games, and the consistency in the way that in which they lost these games, but you got this 13-2 out of conference record where you beat a top 25 basketball program and you make your first top 25 ranking in since 2011. Like you do things for the first time in a long time, and then after building it up, this is going to be a good one. We're ranked. Boom, falls right down the hill, and again in a very consistent fashion. Now that's my next question. You're the basketball guy. Mm-hmm. Now I know Coach's answer didn't make me feel very good, but what do you make of all these second half debaclings?
I mean, for me, like it's the consistency of, I don't know, it could be a lot of different things. Like some teams are great second half teams, and I think that it can be pointed at the coach of, well, this coach is clearly making adjustments at the half and ours doesn't feel like it is. It could be that. I think you could also point to the fact of
you don't have a ball handler.
You don't really have a primary ball handler, and I love Silas Demery to death. I think he plays great defense, and I think he's a much bigger and physical point guard, something you don't see a lot at the college level, and I think that's a rarity, and I think that's why he is such a good point guard for Georgia. But like, you don't have this main distributor of the basketball, in my opinion, like this true shot creator for others, not creating his own shot, but creating for others. But I think it also boils down to the fact of this team is going on stretches of going 0 for 10 for the next 5 minutes or going 0 for 9, not hitting a shot. And a coach can only do so much for you. And I said this in the Discord the other day of, it's the equivalent of your football players not catching the ball. Your coach can only do so much to drop the right play and get a guy wide open and get you a great look. But at the end of the day, you got to hit your freaking shot. So if you want to put that on the coach of you're not recruiting players that can hit your shots, which I don't think is the case, it could also just be a moment of they're not delivering in those types of situations. I think that can also stem from the fact of this is a program that has not been in these types of situations a whole lot. And I think it also stems from the fact of you became competitive in the SEC in a year which people are saying is the most talented conference in the history of college basketball. From top to bottom, the SEC this year is loaded with talent. It's why road games are so difficult. It's why home games have been so difficult this year. I mean, it's just unfortunate timing almost, but I think it can stem from a lot of things. I don't just want to blame it and point one finger at one guy.
Mike White's been here this third year?
Yes.
Yes.
Mike White's been here 3 years. I was told from a source inside the building that the 3 years prior to Mike White, they averaged a net rating in the 220s range.
Yeah.
You know where they're at right now in NCAA net rating? 38th. 38th in net rating right now.
It's pretty good.
That's an improvement, okay?
A massive improvement. And I do understand that there have been, 1 year turnarounds. Iowa State got thrown at us over and over again. And Missouri gets thrown at. Missouri, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't their best basketball player didn't he just transfer from a blue blood? Like off Duke's roster or something like that, off Kentucky's roster. Got a couple of those guys. So I'm not saying it hasn't been an investment because the data says that you guys have gone out and recruited at a high level. There's questions now about finishing the coaching off. I also don't think there's enough credit being given to the fact that he's finally getting recruiting momentum as well. Now, since he's gotten there, he's always been a decent transfer portal guy, bringing veteran basketball players in. But they're in rank like the top 20 in the next 2 recruiting classes at the University of Georgia in basketball. That's different. There's a very different echelon of talent. I mean, you landed one of the biggest legacies in recent memory for next year. It's Dominique Wilkins' son, Jacob Wilkins, who is as close as a 5-star as you could possibly get of not being a 5-star. And then you also got Kareem Stagg and some other guys coming in. Like, he recruits. And I think that was my biggest point, too, of Mike White is it's one thing to talk about these turnarounds, and they do it in the transfer portal and whatnot, but I think it's also important to highlight that Mike White is getting players that builds a foundation for the next couple of years.
All right, boys, we've run our course on topics that don't matter to the majority of our audience here. I've already seen it in the chat. Has this turned into a basketball show? No, this has turned into a Brooks talks to folks about sticking his foot in his mouth. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, on the local hour. So, there we go. Let's get back to football, shall we?
Once again, back to the point of Georgia fans don't really care about basketball.
But if I'm the asshole for pointing it out. You know?
No, I'm defending it.
It hurts my heart when I see comments like that.
I'm defending it. It's like, why are we talking about basketball?
I know it does.
And I know
guess what we're getting into, guys? And we talked about it in the reportments out from what Ben Wolt wrote today. It was right there. $14 to $15 million of the 20 and a half going right to football. And here's the deal. This is not funny to me, but it's the reality of the situation. Georgia spends $15 million of the rev share on football in 2025. Let's just say 2026 when it comes around. They spend $15 million. They go 10-2. They lose in the semifinals. And they only spent 15 of the 20 and a half million. What is the majority of the Georgia Bulldog fan base going to say?
Spend the 20.
Spend the 20. Why are we spending $5 million could get me Jeremiah Smith, dog. What are we doing? Screw those other sports. We want to be good at football. 90% of the people, at least in this space that watch this show, are going to say that. Even the portion of the Georgia fan base that claims to care about basketball. They know in their heart of hearts they care more about football. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going. We're going into how much does it matter? How much do you care? Literally, how much do you care? And that info and that data will dictate exactly how much money they go to spend on those teams. That's where we're going. And that's unfortunate, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out how much y'all really care about these other sports when you have shortcomings in sports that you can spend more money on. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
That was what's crazy to me. Y'all have all these, like, this season in basketball is considered a failure to people who are complaining about it. And yet, here we are. You still have an opportunity to make the tournament, okay? And you beat Kentucky this year. You have a ranked opponent win for the first time in forever, and you're ranked for the first time in forever. Mm-hmm. Failure. Huh? We talk all the time on this channel about managing expectations, and expectations for that program got tilted on its damn head. Mm-hmm. All right, we are officially, boys, locked in for Indianapolis. Now,
let's go.
Because the NFL decided they were going to drag their feet, we are not flying.
That's okay.
We will be driving. We will be getting
another
a real
road
car.
trip?
Yeah, a little road trip, three-way. First three-way road trip.
In a hot minute.
What was our last collective road trip?
I believe it was Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn of 2020.
No, Vandy.
Nashville is after.
Always a road game because they respect the homies a little bit more than everybody else, apparently.
Yep.
So, yeah, we got a collective road trip going up Indianapolis. We're going to be in town Wednesday through Saturday. Question from the chat, who's going to be sitting shotgun? Probably Stretch.
I usually sit shotgun, it appears.
Yeah, probably Stretch. The other answer, who's going to be driving? Nobody but yours truly. DJ tunes will be rotated. We found out on our way to New Orleans.
Yeah.
Spotify does a great thing. If you have the same Bluetooth connected,
Jam.
You can be out here jamming, sharing jam sessions.
I don't use Spotify.
You ain't gonna be DJing there, baby. DJ so me and the boy Curb gonna be on the tunage on the way to Indianapolis. I'm excited. The biggest, I always talk about this, the biggest imposter syndrome scenario that I ever put myself in, by far, this one. Because you're gonna walk in buildings and in rooms that you ain't got no business being up in as a 30, 23, 24-year-old reporter. Got no business, college football reporter, going up into these rooms, and it makes you elevate, okay? You found this out last year. You're going to find this out this year. You're going to be in conversations with guys where you're like, oh, my God, what do I even bring to this conversation? Nothing. But you're going to have to figure out how to do it, and it's going to make you grow.
You have to be funny.
Oh, yeah. Be funny or be informative. Like, when I get in those conversations, we going to talk the new world order of college football. Because I am very well versed in that conversation. Might even slip in the fact that I've been studying these guys on a recruitment basis in a talent evaluation since they were 15. Right? Might mix one of those in. Got to find your avenue. Got to find your area of expertise in these rooms. It's going to be difficult this coming up week. Excited to be there, though. We got some categories for you. Mr. Expectation Shatterer. This is the football player from the University of Georgia that will overperform testing metric projections. Okay? Think Tyke Smith from last year. Our next category, Mr. Meeting. Now, The category sounds like the guy who's just going to do well in meetings. We have another category of that. Mr. Meeting is the Georgia football player that is going to get requested ad nauseum. Okay, think of a football player like George Pickens a couple years ago, where a lot of teams got a lot of questions about who this guy is. Does he love football? That kind of stuff. Okay, Mr. Meeting. Mr. Interview. That's the guy that's going to knock it out of the park. Mr. Field Drills speaks for itself. Mr. No Need. Guy don't even need to show up. And who do we think is going to be the biggest winner? Let's start with Mr. Expectation Shatterer. Who's it going to be, guys?
I'm going with Jalen Walker on this. I think that Jalen Walker has the potential to excel in everything where they go, oh my God, this guy's way more athletic than we thought he was. He's the Butkus Award winner. He does all these things. Similar to what Trayvon Walker did. Trayvon Walker was not the projected number 1 overall pick coming into the NFL Combine, but he walked away with that because of what he did through the drill. So I think that's kind of what Jalen Walker can be. I don't know if number 1 overall is in his cards, but I think he can certainly cement himself as a top 10, top 5 prospect.
I'm going to go last because I got 3 suggestions here. Who do you got?
I have Arian Smith.
Ooh.
And this is what I mean by Mr. Expectations of this is how I envision a world of this going for Arian at the Combine. Of everybody knows he's going to run fast. I'm not saying he's going to blow that out of the water even more than people expect him to, but I think that what's going to happen is Arian could have a really good day at the Combine, and it's going to be a bunch of people on Twitter saying like, man, if he could have just shown this consistently at Georgia, like that's what I'm going to talk about.
They were doing
that's what I'm talking
Senior
about.
Bowl.
Yeah, the Senior Bowl. Like, man, this dude's making contested catches. I think that he could have overall great day at the Combine, and people be really much higher on Arian.
Now, this is a ball knower right here. Sports masochist in the chat says Gauntlet gonna cook him. That is a fact. The wide receiver Gauntlet gonna look like this one with a couple drops, I can imagine. My expectation guy, Mr. Expectations Shatterer. I got 3 suggestions, and all 3 get mentioned here because you 2 didn't grab either one of them. Smile Mondon, Taron Ingram-Dawkins. Taron Ingram-Dawkins came into Georgia at like 300 pounds. He left at like 272. That guy's going to run. He's going to run fast comparatively. And then Jared Wilson.
That's a really good one.
Jared Wilson's going to – I think Jared Wilson might leave, and I'm going to talk about this with the biggest winner. I think Jared Wilson's got an opportunity to leave Indianapolis as the bona fide OC1.
Yeah.
Do you remember what happened to those centers that moved well in field drills last year?
They
skyrocketed. Movement patterns on this guy are going to be nuts in those field drills.
I do think the thing that will hurt Jared Wilson is that he never took reps interior of guard.
Yeah, he's a one-position player in most people's mind. Also, I want to point out, I love Jared Wilson. Okay, I think Jared Wilson's going to be a good pro. I read something today of someone saying that he's like a guaranteed guy to know Mike IDs and is a real savant in the world of football. I've never seen that. Okay. I watched for 6 weeks on this channel us identifying clear examples where Jared Wilson points to a Mike identification. Carson Beck has to walk to the line of scrimmage, recorrect the Mike identification, and then they go play football. All right. That's an improper evaluation on this football player. This football player's eval starts with the athletic profile and ends with the athletic profile.
And it's also coming into the first year where he was starting. He was never like, hey, this guy is one of one when it comes to medals. You had that in Cedric Van Pran. It was all,
you have that in Bobo coming up.
The compliments talked about him where this guy is so much more athletic than he. Not that it's a bad thing that he's not necessarily known for his.
It stuck out like a sore thumb to me in the eval. It's just like it's not true, especially from the company that we saw it from.
Yeah.
But they're a rating company, you know. So, Mr. Meeting, who's going to get asked for a ton of meetings?
I'm going to go with Tate Ratledge here.
Injury
simply
concerns?
because of the injury.
Yeah.
There's not really like a personality in this draft class where you go like, that's going to raise some red flags for teams. And I do think another one is Xavier Truss, simply because he played a lot of positions, and I also feel like a guy like Xavier Truss got invited to this combine to get his brain picked.
I got a guy that I think is the easiest answer here. Go ahead.
The one I picked was who would these NFL GMs and NFL staffs have the most questions to ask about somebody? I think that is Trevor Etienne.
Yep.
I think it is him because it's you transfer from Florida, you elected to go to Georgia.
You flirted with going back.
Yeah.
Now you're in.
Had one off the field stir up that thing. That's certainly going to be a question, I'm sure. And then also there are some injuries over this past couple of seasons. Hey, where are you at now with this and whatnot? So I think that there's just the most questions that you could ask a Georgia player. I think it is going to be directed at Trevor of, you were the number 2 at Florida, another SEC program. You go to Georgia, maybe didn't end up being statistically the type of season you had hoped, but you were still really good. Just kind of wanting to pick his brain on his overall career arc as a college athlete.
It's a good point. And also, it seems like the top end of the running back class is kind of combobulated. Mm-hmm. It's like really, really tight with like 3 names. And then there's 15 names competing for the other spots. You would imagine the NFL turns those cards over as much as they possibly can. Who was your suggestion? Did you give it to us?
Tate Ratledge.
My bad. Yeah, you're right. You let off. I think it's a good suggestion, by the way. I think it's Liz Frank. Liz Frank against Clemson?
Yes.
And then we have a tightrope surgery this year.
Correct.
And I think he played with a shoulder harness for quite some time.
He did.
Okay, so there's a level of, hey, you came out of college football looking like you played 42 games in the SEC with regards to the medical history. Mr. Interview, who's going to crush it? Jalen Walker?
That's who I put.
I also put Tate Ratledge for this one. I think because he's going to get so much exposure to the questions and things like that, he's got a personality that's football based. Like he's one of those guys where he's going to go into a room and connect with certain coaches, and they're really, really going to like him.
I picked Jalen Walker because I think he captivates a room. I think he has a voice for it. Like when Jalen Walker starts talking, you immediately turn your head and like, who's talking right now? And that has to go with this guy.
Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Of like, this guy understands football at a high level. He's got some energy to him. He's got some juice to him. I think that people are going to fall in love with Jalen Walker.
Yeah, we better climb the sports media ranks before Jalen Walker gets done playing ball, because I'm pretty sure he's coming straight to an SEC network to you, like right to television. From my understanding,
he's got the smile for it, man.
He's a super smart guy, and very, very likable.
Yes.
So yeah, he's gonna take a microphone right out of my mouth.
That sounded way worse than it was.
Well, I mean, I'm not very likable. You know?
I'm
not very likable at all.
Not what I meant.
Yeah, I know what you were meaning, Mr. Field Drills.
This is where I pinned Smile Munden.
This is where I picked Malachi Starks.
I went Smile Munden here too. I think Smile's a much better athlete than he gets credit for. And I think that's going to shine through. And it's also, this is always a time where I feel like linebacker classes separate themselves, where there's guys that come into this where it's like, that's your 5th best linebacker here. And then someone's like, holy shit, who was that guy? We saw this last year where we talked about how it felt like a weaker linebacker class. I think Smile Munden can really take advantage of these opportunities.
Well, and I think too how the NFL combine process goes of, you measure in, and then you go do all the field drills. Smile's going to measure in, and people are already going to be like, oh my gosh, like this guy is huge, and he looks huge, like even when you just walk up on him. Like
so big.
Yes. And so I think that plays benefit to him.
The width of his muscle mass is insane.
And if think that on first glance of him, like if you're just watching on TV, you kind of see like a lankier type of linebacker. He's not that.
He almost looks thin in the lower.
Yeah, and he's not that.
No, he's not.
So I think he's going to measure in great, and then he's going to go do all the field drills. Like, okay, so he's that big, and he moves that well.
I think at the Senior Bowl he measured at 6'2.5", 237.
Damn. Yeah.
And he's got to carry 80 pounds in his biceps. I mean, he got to. They're huge. Yeah, he's going to ball out. I think Malachi with the ball in the air is going to look so smooth. So smooth. In a group of guys that are going to fight the shit out of it. That DB group every year is just taking balls off the face, things bouncing all over the place, not catching anything. Malachi Stark's going to pick and stick every single thing in the air out there. You just grow up.
Never, dude.
Just grow up.
Too much fun, man.
We did. We saw multiple DBs take footballs to the face last year.
Yeah, it's. I mean, they do a high point drill. I don't remember if it's the back corner of the end zone. They did that with wide receivers, I know, but it did not look smooth. It's like, that's why you're playing DB.
My favorite one, and he's going to look great at it, is when they weave them and then speed turn them and make them run to the sideline at a 45-degree angle and chase that 60-yard air ball. You see DBs that clearly panic, and then you see DBs that look like they could do that every single down.
They play wide receiver.
He's one of those. Did he ever have a dropped pick?
Not that I can recall.
He had one in his first game, actually. He almost got a second one against Bo Nix in Oregon.
There is a consensus pick for worst hands of a defensive back in the history of Georgia in the Kirby Smart era. Who is it?
Gosh, I don't know.
Give me a
It's
hint.
bona fide. One answer, only answer.
Give me a hint.
He really fast.
Oh, I know who it was. Eric Stokes.
Eric Stokes.
Who ironically had the most
had
picks
most
in
interceptions. All of them body caught. The balls caught him.
Well, that Florida one, he bobbled like 3 times.
I know, and then took it back to the house. Yeah, Eric Stokes in his pro day at Georgia, just like taking them all over the place.
Hey, you looked.
That was on me.
I didn't say anything. You looked at me.
That was on me. Mr. No Need, who doesn't even need to show up.
This is Malachi.
And I feel like he's one of the few ones. Like Brock Bowers going in last year, there wasn't much he was going to do for his draft stock.
He didn't.
Exactly.
He didn't do anything.
But even if he did anything, it would have been like, okay, great. Malachi Starks is one of these guys. Like Jalen Walker has the opportunity to really increase his draft stock. Michael Williams has the opportunity to really increase his draft stock. I feel like Malachi Starks is going to be kind of one of these guys where it's
top
like
15 lock.
He'll be where he is, and he can bona fide that in Indianapolis, but I don't think he really needs to be there.
Brock Bowers was so much of a Mr. No Need that when he showed up to the combine in shorts and a t-shirt, everybody's like, this guy isn't the number 1 tight end in the class. Ain't no way this is the dude that's been dominating SEC teams for the last 3 years. He's still top 15.
That picture of him standing next to Gronk, and like,
These two guys play the same position? No, they don't.
No.
They don't play the same position.
No.
You know,
Newsflash.
One's an H, one's a Y. Learn football. Sorry.
no, hey, it's fair. It's a fair criticism.
Rob Gronkowski, greatest Y of all time. Brock Bowers going to be the greatest H of all time. And stats will say he's the greatest tight end of all time.
I'll take it.
I would have almost put Michael in this, but the unfortunate thing for Michael is that his position group has become so competitive in this class, and it could fluctuate so much after the combine. I think there could be so many moving pieces that he needs to go and do anything and everything.
Michael also didn't statistically have the year that you would need to necessarily.
He's been banged up.
Yeah, and it's not through any of his fault. It's also like Georgia players never light up the stat sheet when it comes to sacks. Like that's never been what it's been. Like Trevor Walker, Nolan Smith, all these guys, like you look at their stats and it's like, Michael Williams is kind of the same thing, but I agree with you. Like it is a very competitive position where you kind of have to set yourself apart with what you do athletically.
Who's going to be the biggest winner in Indianapolis other than us 3?
I'm gonna honestly, I don't want to say Arian Smith.
I think I'm going to say Jared.
He's going to look so small.
Aaron?
Yeah, he's going to look very small.
I agree, but I think there's also going to be a time where it's like, okay, this guy runs a 4.3 something. He's got better
4.36.
Yeah, he's got better hands than we give him credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Like Arian Smith could very well win this. Like he could also destroy his draft stock if it comes out as like a 4.45 runner and he's not catching things. It's going to be like But I think Arian Smith could very much make him.
I also think these position drills in Indy can like last year we left thinking Brian Thomas had one of the worst days up there in Indianapolis on field. Damn near rookie of the year. Damn near rookie of the year. So some of this stuff might not matter.
Yeah, I think that I would pick Jared just because of his positional value of what he could do for himself. If you do lock yourself down as a number 1 center in this class,
third-round pick.
Yeah, and that does so much for your draft stock at that position because if you're not number 1, there's no telling how long you could wait.
There is no doubt for folks sitting at home wondering why, or may still be wondering why Jared Wilson didn't come back. Look at the center class this year; it's just depleted. So much so that, I mean, Jared's it goes Cedric and then Jared, and Cedric was a 5th-round draft pick. Jared's going to be overdrafted over what Cedric was.
Yep.
The NFL is going to value him at a higher rate this year in the NFL draft than they did a 3-year captain at the University of Georgia. Does that mean Cedric is a worse player than Jared? No, that means the class and the market right now is far more fortuitous to Jared than it was for Cedric coming out. Absolutely. Cedric had to fight the Powers Johnson kid out of Oregon, who also plays guard and was a damn near rookie, first-team rookie guy in Oakland this year as a guard, wasn't he?
Yeah. Vegas.
He played really, really well. Vegas. I said Oakland again, didn't I? Yeah, they're the San Diego Chargers too.
That's fair.
93 through 30, and if this doesn't start with Richard Seymour, we riot.
It's absolutely starting.
We riot.
And NFL Hall of Famer, one of the best defensive players that Georgia had. One of the more underrated names as well. I feel like people don't really put Richard Seymour up there, but he did work in the 90s. Number 92, I went with Brett Thorson. It's slim pickings there, and let's be honest.
No Julian Rochester?
Nah.
Oh, good shout.
Australian punter with a sense of humor that had a 75-yard punt. How you gonna? There's no one else. I looked, man.
Yeah, I'm out.
Number 91, Tim Crow, played on the Bulldogs' 1980 National Championship team, had 210 career tackles as an interior defensive lineman.
Who? What?
Tim Crow.
Tim Crow? What years?
Played
80s?
It's 79 to 81, I believe.
Hell yeah.
Played on the 1980 National Championship team.
It was a dog, huh?
210 tackles
As a D tackle?
Yeah.
Over 4
impressive.
years?
Anybody that's got to go practice against Herschel Walker for 2 years, you earn your spot
Probably
on this
is.
list.
Yeah.
Number 90, Freddie Gilbert, played on the 1980 National Championship team as well, had 230 career tackles as an interior defensive.
That's just downright disrespectful to Tramel Walthour.
Love Tramel Walthour, but
That's all I got.
look, when you get like the 90s is really, really tough. There's not
Yeah,
like
no shit.
There's not like
Ain't a lot of great ones.
there's not a lot of like, damn, that's a great player.
We
No
need a
offense.
dude to wear 90.
Someone do.
91, 92.
Come on.
What's Elijah Griffin wearing this year? Do we know?
90.
You wear 90?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Elijah Griffin. Best dog to wear 90 already stamped.
Hell yeah.
Heard KJ Bolden might make
You
a
heard it
jersey
here
swap.
first.
The 80s will make it better. 89 through 80.
Woo, talk to me, Charlie Warner. Come on now.
Oh, yeah.
Coming right down the pipe. Hell yeah. Gonna be a long time pro, Charlie Warner.
Oh yeah. He already by standards he is.
He's a vet.
He's been in the league 6 years.
What?
Yeah.
6 years?
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Warner?
2019 draft class, correct?
That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that. 2 teams.
Rabin County legend.
Niners and Falcons.
It's been 10 seasons since Todd Gurley took a snap in a Georgia uniform.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. We're going on year 6.
Unk status.
This will be the 7th football season. 6th? 7th? I don't know. I'm good. Y'all good?
Yep.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button on your way out. I love